Chapter 727. Why did you attack the tribe near the lake? Yu Qianzhou asked with a cold look in his eyes. Are you going to attack me if you're not satisfied with my answer? Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed. He was one of the 12 great immortal lords of the immortal world, but now he was being interrogated by a tribulation transcendence cultivator. Wasn't it funny? Behind the humor was a sense of desolation. Yu Qianzhou stared at him silently. He didn't say yes or no, waiting for a reply. However, his expression was a little cold. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. If you don't speak, it means you agree. The reason is very simple. Although the little crocodiles are my clones, they are still flesh and blood. They have to eat, but they don't dare to attack the tribe on such a large scale, for fear of attracting unexpected trouble. But because of the loosening of the suppression once every 300 years, I thought that the big crocodiles could protect the little crocodiles, so I wanted to let them have a good meal. Who knew that I would get into trouble and meet you? I understand, Yu Qianzhou replied calmly. The surrounding green flying swords hovered in the air, ready to attack. Haha. Looks like you have to kill me. Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled bitterly. So this is the result of waiting for more than 100,000 years. If I had known, I wouldn't have endured. Forget it, I'll die. Anyway, even if you don't kill me, I don't have the willpower and ability to continue suffering. Yu Qianzhou said expressionlessly, why are you so pessimistic? His words were comforting, but there was no consolation in his tone. I've been deceiving myself. Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed sadly. More than 100,000 years of suffering, in order to maintain this old life, my cultivation has been consumed day after day. Now, my cultivation has fallen from mid-stage immortal emperor to late-stage exalted immortal. Even if I go out, with my current cultivation, there is no one in the world who can speak for me. Why should I go out and humiliate myself? A huge silver-white body, hundreds of meters long, lay quietly at the bottom of the dark lake, covered by mud. It had not moved for 100,000 years. That pair of big red eyes, the only thing that could move, slowly closed, waiting for the end of fate. Yu Qianzhou nodded slightly. He could understand Immortal Lord Crocodile's feelings. It was like a boss being released after serving his sentence, only to be reduced to carrying shoes for his underling. For many people, this was a huge gap, and it was very difficult to bear. Most importantly, the enemy that he could not forget, the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch, had fallen, causing him to lose his will to fight. If the Myriad Swords Demon Monarch was still here, he might have endured the humiliation and started all over again. But now, everything was over. Yu Qianzhou was silent for a moment before he said, I can't find a reason not to kill you. Keeping you alive won't do me any good, and it might even bring trouble to myself in the future. However, you can give me a reason not to kill you, or you can take out some benefits to bribe me. You don't have to say anything else. I just want to die. Besides, do I look like someone who can give you any benefits? I have a small fortune in the immortal world, but after so many years, I'm afraid it has already fallen into someone else's hands. Besides, with your cultivation, you can't go to the immortal world. Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes and smiled calmly. Little brother, do it. I won't resist, I just want you to give me a quick death. If we are fated in the next life, I will thank you again. The trace of compassion that had just arisen completely disappeared, and Yu Qianzhou said coldly, Immortal Lord Crocodile, then I'm sorry. He was a decisive person, and since he had already made up his mind, he did not hesitate to attack. Hundreds of cyan silhouettes let out a buzzing noise in the water, piercing through the water along with sharp cyan lights, creating circles of dazzling cyan light. A series of duo sounds rang out, and hundreds of green flying swords all hit their targets. In an instant, hundreds of green dots of light bloomed on Immortal Lord Crocodile's back. They were the hilts of the green flying swords. They had not completely sunk into the thick leather armor, and some of them were still exposed. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes suddenly opened, and his huge red eyes stared at Yu Qianzhou with an inexplicable expression. Meanwhile, the corners of Yu Qianzhou's mouth twitched. This old monster's skin was too thick and sturdy. Even the sharpness of the green flying swords could not penetrate his skin. As expected of an old monster that had lived for hundreds of thousands of years. Little brother, we are fated to meet, and we have been chatting for so long. What is your name? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly asked. Yu Qianzhou scratched his head, a little embarrassed. Yu Qianzhou. It was as if he was ashamed to mention his own name. Well, it was indeed a little embarrassing that the other party was lying there without resisting, and he couldn't even kill him. Yu Qianzhou, don't hold back. I don't blame you, I just want a quick end to this, Immortal Lord Crocodile said solemnly. There was really no resentment in his tone, as if he was afraid that Yu Qianzhou would be soft-hearted, so he comforted him with kind words. Okay, I'll try again. Yu Qianzhou floated in the water, waving his arms and slowly pulling out the green flying swords that were deeply embedded in Immortal Lord Crocodile's skin. In an instant, the swords circled and danced in the water. As Yu Qianzhou pointed with a ferocious expression, hundreds of flying swords shot out wildly. Duo sounds rang out again, but the result was the same as before. The sword hilts were exposed, and did not penetrate deep. There was a brief silence in the lake. Yu Qianzhou was dumbfounded. Immortal Lord Crocodile was also speechless. His big red eyes turned, and then he revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He had not fought with a tribulation-passing cultivator for many years. Even with his immortal emperor cultivation back then, he did not have the opportunity to fight with a tribulation-passing cultivator. He had almost forgotten that a tribulation-passing cultivator wanted to break through his body's natural defense, which was the nearly 2-meter-thick leather armor. It was probably just a little bit off. Yu Qianzhou's flying swords could penetrate his skin, which was already considered a good result for a tribulation-passing cultivator. What he did not know was that Yu Qianzhou was relying on the sharpness of the green flying swords. Damn it! I don't believe it. The moment Yu Qianzhou cursed, it meant that he was angry out of humiliation. He had never seen such an embarrassing thing. He spread out his arms, and green light flashed continuously. In an instant, all 3,000 green flying swords appeared. Immortal Lord Crocodile was slightly shocked by his desperate look. Go! Yu Qianzhou waved his arms and shouted angrily. The green light in the lake shot toward Immortal Lord Crocodile's body like a meteor shower, but it did not have any effect. The dense green light spots inlaid on the silver-white leather were pulled out and circled again, moving up and down according to Yu Qianzhou's hand gestures. In an instant, the green light in the lake shuttled back and forth like rain, and the sound of it hitting the leather was endless. Yu Qianzhou was completely enraged. He didn't believe that the sharpness of the blue flame flying sword couldn't break the old monster's skin. Then, he would bombard the old monster indiscriminately. There would come a time when the old monster's skin would be torn apart. Immortal Lord Crocodile was shocked by such an unruly move. No one would want to see themselves die like this. Even if the defense of his skin was broken, with this guy's cultivation, he would not be able to kill him in 1 or 2 moves. If he used this method, he would definitely not be killed by him, but tortured to death. Wait! Yu Qianzhou, wait! Immortal Lord Crocodile's voice trembled as he tried to stop him. The green light stopped for a moment. Yu Qianzhou stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile with bloodshot eyes and said in a low voice, "What's wrong? Old monster, do you want to go back on your word and not die? Let me tell you, no way, it's too late to regret now." Again. Wait! Immortal Lord Crocodile said fearfully, "Yu Qianzhou, I didn't go back on my word, but you promised to give me a quick death. I'm scared to see you cut me like this. Are you sure you can give me a quick death like this?" Yu Qianzhou woke up from his madness. He looked at the silver leather that was riddled with holes from his flying swords, but had not been broken. He was also stunned. After a moment of silence, he said awkwardly, "I have an idea. It'll work this time." Immortal Lord Crocodile said fearfully, "Are you sure?" "Yu Qianzhou, don't scare me. Let me die in peace, okay?" He had never thought that he would end up scaring himself by trying to kill himself. It seemed that it was better to continue living than to die this way. The disheartened Immortal Lord Crocodile began to waver. "Don't worry. I have a lot of tricks up my sleeves." Yu Qianzhou smiled sheepishly. "Close your eyes. You won't be so scared if you don't look. I'll definitely give you a quick death." Okay, I'll trust you one more time." Immortal Lord Crocodile closed his eyes decisively. He really didn't want to look anymore. "Go!" Yu Qianzhou's arms formed a sword seal, and the 3,000 flying swords shot out explosively. With a burst of duo-duo sounds, all of them stabbed into the enormous body. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyelids moved slightly. He wanted to open his eyes to take a look, but he resisted. Yu Qianzhou suddenly clapped his hands and shouted angrily, "Burn!" With a boom, the 3,000 flying swords all burst into raging cyan flames and attached themselves to the enormous silver-white body, burning it. This was an extraordinary performance for him. Setting fire underwater required a delicate balance, and he had to use both water and fire arts at the same time. The cannibals anxiously waited on the lakeside. They had waited until the eastern sky began to brighten. It was almost dawn, but Yu Qianzhou still had not come out of the water. Although these people lived primitive and barbaric lives, they were kind-hearted. Everyone stared at the lake for the entire night, hoping for a miracle to happen. The cannibals, led by Chief Garland, quietly waited by the lake. They could not help but show a trace of despair in their eyes. But at this moment, the entire lake in front of them suddenly emitted a faint green light, making the moon lake as beautiful as a gem. Everyone looked at each other. They did not know what was happening at the bottom of the lake, but their eyes shone with hope again. Chapter 728. At the bottom of the lake, 300 to 400 meters deep, green flames spread, covering Immortal Lord Crocodile's body and burning it angrily. According to Yu Qianzhou's estimation, as long as Immortal Lord Crocodile did not resist, the high temperature of the green fire should be able to burn him to death. The process might not be pleasant, but he had fulfilled half of his promise to Immortal Lord Crocodile: kill him. After half an hour, Yu Qianzhou stared down, his face darkening. He could clearly see what was happening under the fire. It seemed that Immortal Lord Crocodile's skin did not change at all under the burning of the green fire. Immortal Lord Crocodile, who was under the fire, also felt the high temperature, but Yu Qianzhou did not kill him. After waiting for a while, he finally opened one eye to peek. It would have been fine if he had not seen it, but the moment he saw it, he was startled. His eyes flew open, and he cried out involuntarily, "Qinghua!" "Ha!" Yu Qianzhou laughed awkwardly. "Old monster, don't be impatient. Just wait a little longer, and I will definitely burn you to death." "Yu Qianzhou, is this what you mean by giving me a quick death?" Immortal Lord Crocodile roared angrily. "Put away your green fire, it's useless to me." "Useless? Why is it useless?" Yu Qianzhou believed that he would not lie, because he also realized that the green fire could not burn him. He opened his arms, and the large area of green fire turned into several fire dragons and entered his sleeves. Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at him as he absorbed the green fire into his body. He asked in shock, "Where did you come from? How can you store the Samadhi true fire in your body? This is rare even in the celestial world. This is not something that can be found in the human world. You're going to die anyway. Why do you care about this?" Yu Qianzhou said casually. He asked curiously, "Why is your body so powerful?" You're not afraid of the green fire when you're not resisting. What's going on? Immortal Lord Crocodile said angrily, haven't you noticed that I'm different from ordinary crocodiles? I can see it at a glance. It was bigger than the average crocodile. The strangest thing is that it's actually silvery white in color. To tell you the truth, this is the first time I've seen it. Yu Qianzhou clicked his tongue. Bullsh *t. I'm a primordial mutant. I'm born extraordinary, and I'm unique in the three realms. It would be strange if you've seen someone else. Immortal Lord Crocodile said proudly, I was born impervious to fire and water, and I'm immune to all poisons. My cultivation speed is also faster than ordinary people. It's an innate divine ability. What right do you think I have to become one of the 12 great immortal monarchs of the immortal world? Others might be afraid of your green fire, but this old man doesn't care. Yu Qianzhou was surprised. So it's a rare animal. No wonder you didn't react at all when I said I was going to burn you with green fire. You were born to be impervious to fire and water. Impressive. By the way, does this fire have any effect on you? With a flip of his palm, a ball of black flame suddenly rose from the center of his palm, and the surrounding temperature instantly dropped. He was prepared to make a move after getting a clear understanding of the situation, lest he wasted his efforts. Immortal Lord Crocodile's bright red pupils shrank, and he exclaimed, Black fire? You actually have black fire, one of the Samadhi true fires, in your body? Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and said, Don't make a fuss. Let's get to the point. Can black fire kill you? Yu Qianzhou, have you already cultivated the Samadhi true fire? Immortal Lord Crocodile had just finished speaking when he quickly denied it. Impossible. Rumor has it that those who can cultivate such an amazing technique are all people who have reached the peak of the celestial world. With your cultivation, it's not enough to fuse 3 types of fire into the Samadhi true fire. His big red eyes were filled with disbelief, as if he had seen a monster. It was difficult for him to get back to the topic at hand. No, I'm still missing one type of purple fire. Why? Look at your surprised expression. Is the Samadhi true fire very powerful? Yu Qianzhou showed a humble expression. It's more than powerful. Immortal Lord Crocodile's tone was solemn. The Samadhi true fire is invincible and can refine anything. It's the true fire that refiners dream of, and it's also the nemesis of cultivators in the 3 realms. The tyrannical part of the true Samadhi fire was that no matter how high one's cultivation was, even if one's cultivation was strong enough to withstand its burning, once one was trapped by it, regardless of whether one was human, devil, demon, ghost, or immortal, it would rapidly burn one's cultivation. When you can't withstand it anymore, it will immediately refine you to the point where you'll never be able to reincarnate. This thing is a taboo even for the immortal emperor and the emperor of the underworld. So if anyone in the celestial world has cultivated the Samadhi true fire, immortal Emperor Jin Tai will kill them at all costs. The threat is too great, and it's simply untouchable. It's that powerful? Yu Qianzhou rubbed his chin with one hand, his eyes flashing. After a while, he stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile and asked, Old monster, tell me honestly, where can I find the purple fire? If you dare to hide it from me, I'll kill you immediately. Immortal Lord Crocodile paused, then suddenly burst into laughter. You're really not a good person. I'm already lying here motionless, waiting for you to kill me. Why do you still have to threaten me? The fierce expression on Yu Qianzhou's face froze, and he immediately reacted. His aura immediately weakened, and he put on a fawning smile. Immortal Lord Crocodile, since you don't want to live anymore, just tell me where the purple fire is, okay? Immortal Crocodile let out a long sigh and said, Yu Qianzhou, I advise you not to be too ambitious. With your current cultivation, even if you successfully cultivate the Samadhi true fire, it will only bring you harm. Once the news reaches Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's ears, he definitely won't let you go. He'll guarantee your death. You haven't seen how terrifying Jin Tai is, and you can't imagine it. Yu Qianzhou said disdainfully, I can't even live my life now, and I'm always racking my brains to wander around. I don't care about Jin Tai or Yin Tai in the future, I'll just let the present be peaceful first. Just tell me where I can find the purple fire, and you don't have to worry about the rest. You've got guts, kid. You don't even care about immortal Emperor Jin Tai. Immortal Lord Crocodile was first impressed, then said, I don't know where to find the purple fire either. The purple fire is the source of energy that sustains the operation of a realm. It's extremely powerful, and at the same time, invisible and traceless. Very few people can find it. It's said that the purple fire operates according to the laws of heaven. It might be right next to you, or it might be thousands of miles away, or it might be scattered all over the world, and those who are not fated to find it will not be able to find it. Yu Qianzhou was stunned and said in astonishment, it's so mysterious. Doesn't that mean I might never find the purple fire in my lifetime? Yes. That should be the case, but I do know some information about the purple fire in this realm. Maybe it can help you find it, Immortal Lord Crocodile said with a smile. Where? Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up, and he said in surprise, tell me quickly. I can tell you, but you have to promise me one thing. Immortal Lord Crocodile's laughter contained a hint of treachery, as if he had finally found something to use against him. You're threatening me? Let me tell you, I don't fall for that. Yu Qianzhou's face immediately darkened, but after a while, he smiled again and said, I'm just joking with you. If you have any requests, just tell me. As long as it's within my power, I'll definitely do it for you. He patted his chest so loudly that it was almost swollen. He was full of pride, and his words were worth their weight in gold. Despicable person. A complete despicable person. This old man was wrong. If I were to die in your hands, I would really die with regrets. Luckily, this old man came to his senses early. Immortal Lord Crocodile cursed for a while, then said indifferently, this old man suddenly doesn't want to die anymore. As long as you find a way to pull the sword out of my body, I'll tell you about the purple fire. You don't want to die anymore? Yu Qianzhou asked curiously. You just asked me to give you a quick death. He did not think that after chatting with Immortal Lord Crocodile for such a long time and chatting so well with him, Immortal Lord Crocodile's disheartened desire to die had been rekindled. This was no less than a psychologist's counseling. Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly realized that it was actually quite good to be alive. After all, he had persevered for so many years, and now that he had a chance, he naturally had to grasp it. Bullsh *T. Immortal Lord Crocodile said angrily, you stabbed me full of holes, and I'm still alive and well. You call that giving me a quick death? If I let you torment me any further, I'll be scared to death by you. With your little ability, you won't be able to give me a quick death. You can only torture me. I don't want to die now. You just need to tell me if you agree or not. Otherwise, there's no need to talk. Who says I can't give you a quick death? Yu Qianzhou flashed the black fire in his palm. Don't I still have black fire here? I haven't tried it yet. To be honest, he did not want to let Immortal Lord Crocodile go. If he let such a powerful person out, who knew what he would do to him? There's no need to try. Black fire is invincible in the mortal world, but it's useless against people from the reincarnated immortal realm, netherworld realm, and demon realm. The people of the three realms have already been reborn and have lost the vitality of the mortal world. Your black fire won't be of any use at all. To me, it's even worse than blue fire. Unless you have the purple fire or the Samadhi true fire, it's useless, Immortal Lord Crocodile said impatiently. How will you know if you don't try? Without another word, Yu Qianzhou quickly condensed the black fire in his palm into a black flying sword. With a whoosh, it shot directly at the huge body below. In the end, there was a muffled poof. It was as if it had been defeated and could not even stab into the body. It was indeed inferior to the blue fire flying sword. Under Immortal Lord Crocodile's angry glare, Yu Qianzhou smiled sheepishly. I tried. It's really useless. The black sword flew back into his sleeve. I'll ask you again. Do you agree or not? Immortal Lord Crocodile threatened. I won't say this a third time. If you miss this opportunity, even if you agree, I won't tell you anything about the purple fire. Old monster, you're playing this game with me. Do you really think I'm scared? Yu Qianzhou snorted coldly. I'll let you see how powerful I am. If this doesn't let you die a quick death, I'll agree. With that, he closed his eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile swallowed the words that were on the tip of his tongue. He looked at Yu Qianzhou suspiciously and curiously, not knowing what he was up to. Suddenly, he saw a stream of water carrying a fish that weighed more than 5 kilograms. Yu Qianzhou opened his eyes and casually waved his hand at the fish. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes widened. A lively fish turned into a skinny dried fish in the blink of an eye. It floated unsteadily between his eyes on the bridge of his nose. Chapter 729. Its two big red eyes stared at the dried fish on the bridge of its nose. It looked scary and cute at the same time, and one could not help but laugh. Yu Qianzhou asked cheerfully, how is it? This should give you a quick death, right? He was not in a hurry to kill Immortal Lord Crocodile. He had to get information about the purple flames first. He wanted to scare him with the fish first. Immortal Lord Crocodile took a while to recover and asked, how did you do it? When Yu Qianzhou heard that there was hope, he touched his palm and threatened, I advise you to tell me about the purple flame. Otherwise, I will turn you into a dried crocodile and drag you ashore for the cannibals to slowly enjoy. Staring at him with its big red eyes, Immortal Lord Crocodile said in a low voice, you're not a good person at all. I'm afraid that if I tell you, you'll kill me immediately. You're worrying too much. My reputation is well known outside. I have always been honest with both the old and the young, and I always keep my word. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand indifferently. As long as you tell me about the purple flames, I'll definitely find a way to pull the sword out for you. Don't give me that. I've lived for so many years, and I've seen all kinds of people. People like you are the most unreliable. Immortal Lord Crocodile said firmly, just one sentence. Help me pull the sword out, and I'll definitely tell you about the purple flames. Otherwise, no matter how you threaten me, I'm already half dead. Do whatever you want to me. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? Yu Qianzhou shouted. His ruthless nature exploded, and he looked like he was ready to kill at any moment. Hearing this, Immortal Lord Crocodile slowly closed his eyes, acting like a dead pig that was not afraid of boiling water. Yu Qianzhou immediately lost his temper. If he was not greedy for the purple flames, he would definitely kill him immediately. The point was that he really wanted the purple flames. He was used to doing whatever it took to achieve his goals. To put it nicely, he was flexible, but to put it bluntly, he was a despicable person. The two were in a stalemate for a while. Immortal Lord Crocodile seemed certain that Yu Qianzhou would not dare to kill him. He lay there without opening his eyes. Yu Qianzhou gritted his teeth. Old monster, you win. I can help you pull the sword out, but how do I know that you won't go back on your word after you get out? With your ability, if you were to try to kill me, wouldn't I suffer a great loss? Immortal Lord Crocodile finally opened his eyes slowly and said in a low voice, don't worry, I'm more trustworthy than you are. As long as you help me get out of trouble, I will be extremely grateful. Why would I harm you? Don't give me that. Normally, people who boast about their trustworthiness often don't keep their word, said Yu Qianzhou disdainfully. These words were a little like measuring others by oneself. Immortal Lord Crocodile sneered. You're talking about yourself, right? No matter who I'm talking about, you have to make me feel safe. Otherwise, I'll be frank with you. I'd rather kill the wrong person than let you go. Yu Qianzhou scowled. This was indeed his bottom line. No matter how good the purple flames were, they were not as important as his life. If he lost his life, so what if he had the purple flames? Immortal Lord Crocodile was silent. He could understand what Yu Qianzhou was thinking. If he did not believe his words, how could Yu Qianzhou believe his words? After a pause, he said, "Then what do you want? How about this? I can make an oath first. As long as you tell me about the purple flame, I will help you pull out the sword. This should be enough sincerity, right?" Yu Qianzhou said with a sincere expression. In his heart, however, he was thinking that once he knew about the purple flames, he would kill Immortal Lord Crocodile first and then help him pull the sword out. That would not be breaking the oath. Sincerity, my ass. Immortal Lord Crocodile sneered. I've lived for so long, and I've never seen anyone get retribution for breaking an oath. I've never believed in swearing an oath. Yu Qianzhou was stunned and said in astonishment, "No way. There won't be retribution for breaking an oath?" This was a little subversive of his beliefs in the cultivation world. That's right, there will be retribution for breaking an oath. But that's human retribution, not heavenly retribution. I'll get retribution just because I said a few words? Isn't that child's play? If oaths were really that magical, the three realms would have been peaceful long ago. Why would I be trapped here? Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly said in a mocking tone, "How about this? I swear that you let me go first, and then I'll tell you about the purple flames." Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He did not want to let the old monster out at all. He wanted to take advantage of the loophole in the oath to kill the old monster. Who knew that oaths were like farts in the old monster's eyes? Wouldn't he be asking for trouble if he let the old monster go? If he really did that, he would be an idiot. He said helplessly, "Forget it then." "I knew you were up to no good," Immortal Lord Crocodile said sarcastically. Yu Qianzhou frowned in deep thought. This was indeed a difficult problem to solve. The crux of the problem was that neither side believed in the other's promises. If he wanted both sides to compromise, he had to think of a solution that would satisfy both sides. After thinking for a while, his eyes suddenly lit up. He remembered that day on Obedient Island, when he had talked with Bai Chongqun all night. Bai Chongqun had casually mentioned the matter between the Myriad Swords Demon Lord and the Dragon God. He wondered if it was true. Have you ever heard of forming a blood alliance? Yu Qianzhou suddenly asked. Forming a blood alliance? Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned, then immediately refused. No, you must be joking. With your cultivation level, you don't deserve to form a blood alliance with me. If I really do that, I'll suffer a huge loss. Isn't a blood alliance equal? Why would you suffer a loss? Yu Qianzhou asked curiously. He remembered Bai Chongqun saying that the Myriad Swords Demon Lord and the Dragon God only got together after forming a blood alliance of mutual equality. Bai Chongqun didn't know the specifics. Yes, it's equal. A blood alliance is like a blood alliance between mortals. It means to face difficulties together and not to harm each other. Logically speaking, this method is very suitable. But the difference in cultivation level between us is too great. If I encounter any trouble, can you help me deal with it? In other words, if I'm in trouble, you can only watch. And if you're in trouble, I won't have such a good life. Once someone violates the true meaning of forming a blood alliance, they will immediately suffer the backlash of the alliance blood. Only you can think of such a method of harming others to benefit yourself. Do you think I'm a 3-year-old? Immortal Lord Crocodile said angrily. So that's how it is. Yu Qianzhou nodded and muttered to himself. He looked strangely at the huge body below and coughed. Since you're afraid of suffering a loss, how about this? I'll take a step back. As long as you form a blood alliance with me, I can bring you out of the Holy East Lands. Are you satisfied now? Holy East Lands? What Holy East Lands? What does Holy East Lands mean? Immortal Lord Crocodile asked blankly. Yu Qianzhou stared blankly and was truly somewhat speechless. However, thinking about it, it made sense. This group of people trapped in the East Holy Land probably didn't know that the people outside called this place the East Holy Land. So he explained solemnly, what I mean is, I can bring you out of this land that's sealed by the heaven and earth formation. Do you understand? Immortal Lord Crocodile was shocked. What did you say? You can bring me out of this damn place sealed by the heaven and earth formation? Yu Qianzhou, don't lie to me. Everyone who had been trapped with him wanted to escape, but after going through so many difficulties, they all knew how powerful the heaven and earth formation was. They didn't have the ability to get out. Who would have thought that the guy in front of him would say that he could get out? How could he not be shocked? There's hope. Yu Qianzhou said disdainfully, why would I lie to you? I just came from the outside. I'm just here to play. I'll go back when I'm bored. If you don't believe me, there's nothing I can do. Okay, I promise you. I'll form a blood alliance with you. Immortal Lord Crocodile agreed without hesitation. Then he controlled his agitated emotions and said in a low voice, but listen carefully. Once you form a blood alliance with me and help me get out of the heaven and earth formation, you should help me solve the problem. If you don't help me, you'll be devoured by the alliance blood. If you're lying to me, I'll kill you even if I have to suffer the backlash of the alliance blood. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand and said boldly, no problem. Then he said weakly, by the way, I don't know how to form a blood alliance. Teach me how to do it first. Okay. Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately taught him the process of casting the spell. There was something to learn, so Yu Qianzhou paid 120% attention and asked in detail what he didn't understand. Fortunately, this was not a powerful spell. It was just a strange oath method that had never been seen before in the human world. It didn't take a long time to cultivate. Although it was a little complicated, one taught sincerely, and the other learned diligently. The latter quickly mastered it. After learning it, Yu Qianzhou and Immortal Lord Crocodile agreed to start. Yu Qianzhou muttered an incantation and began to cast a spell. He made a cut on his index finger and his fingertip moved quickly in the air before him. Within a 1-meter square blood circle, densely packed lines and Sanskrit words began to appear. At the same time, Immortal Lord Crocodile controlled the water to form a water arrow and shot it into his mouth through the gap between his fangs. A dark red blood snake came out, and its agile steps automatically formed a pattern that looked like what Yu Qianzhou had drawn. When both of them finished casting the spell, Yu Qianzhou pointed at the blood totem in front of him. The blood totem slowly flew toward the blood totem flying from Immortal Lord Crocodile. The two blood totems merged with each other without any difference, as if their hearts were connected. Then, the two blood totems crossed and passed through each other, each emitting a dazzling red light. They formed two beams of red light that shot into Yu Qianzhou and Immortal Lord Crocodile's bodies. Yu Qianzhou checked his body and felt no discomfort. He heaved a sigh of relief and asked, "Is this done?" "It's done." Immortal Lord Crocodile said excitedly. "Yu Qianzhou, quickly help me remove this sword." He couldn't wait any longer. "Old monster, it's a piece of cake." "No problem. Watch me." Yu Qianzhou laughed and flew toward the huge silver body below. After landing on Immortal Lord Crocodile's back, he couldn't help but step on it. After all, there weren't many opportunities to step on an expert like this. He asked, "Old monster, you don't mind if I step on you to borrow strength, right?" Chapter 730. "No, go ahead," Immortal Lord Crocodile replied straightforwardly. He did not have the time to care about that now, nor would he think about Yu Qianzhou's evil intentions. He. Yu Qianzhou squatted down with a smile and touched the thick silvery white leather armor with a rare look on his face. It was really rare. He looked around and realized how small he was squatting on it. He could not help but say, "Old monster, you're really big. If you go out, you'll definitely scare people. Yu Qianzhou, stop dawdling and get down to business first. Don't tell me you don't have the ability to pull it out." Immortal Lord Crocodile screamed. "You're underestimating me." Yu Qianzhou snorted coldly. "Even if it weighs 1,080,000 kilograms, I'll still pull it out." He was not boasting. He had already planned that if he really could not pull it out, he would immediately mobilize a team from Utopia. With everyone working together, there was no reason they could not pull it out. Okay. Then stop dawdling and pull it out." Immortal Lord Crocodile could not wait any longer. Yu Qianzhou walked to the giant sword that pinned Immortal Lord Crocodile and looked it up and down. He could not help but be amazed. The dark golden body of the sword faintly glowed with a golden treasure light, dyeing him golden as well. After being buried in water and mud for so many years, the body of the sword was still shiny. He could feel the majestic aura from the body of the sword before he even touched it. It was indeed not an ordinary object. He walked around the giant sword twice but found a problem. The sword was too big, and he really did not know where to start. He reached out to push it, but it did not move. He pushed it again with all his strength, but it still did not move. Immortal Lord Crocodile also felt it and said sadly, "I forgot to tell you, the body of the sword is stuck in the rock under me. If you want to pull it out, I'm afraid it will not be as simple as 108,000 kilograms of strength. Can you shut up? If I say I'll pull it out for you, I'll pull it out. Why are you being so long-winded?" Yu Qianzhou angrily kicked the sword twice. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly and shut his mouth in disappointment. "Damn it! Only such a big sword can pin you down. It's a perfect match." Yu Qianzhou reached out and stroked the blade of the sword. Suddenly, his eyebrows twitched. He could not help but infuse his divine sense to check it out. As a result, as soon as his divine sense touched the sword, he immediately sensed an ancient aura that deterred the world. It shook back his divine sense that wanted to invade the sword. His divine sense was crazily forced back, and a majestic ancient aura bounced over. Yu Qianzhou didn't have time to react, and was suddenly shaken to the point of vomiting a mouthful of blood. He himself was sent flying. Immortal Crocodile immediately exclaimed, "Yu Qianzhou, are you crazy? How dare you use your divine sense to check it? Didn't I tell you? The sword contains the remnant of the great god Yi's soul. It's not something you can peek at with your low cultivation. You must be tired of living. Are you okay?" Yu Qianzhou, who had fallen on the silver armor more than 10 meters away, struggled to get up. His chest was swollen, and he felt a sweetness in his throat. He spat out another mouthful of blood, which spread in the lake. He spat out the blood, and his breathing was much smoother. However, his face was frighteningly pale. His divine sense had been damaged in an instant. If not for the water's resistance, he would have been sent flying more than 10 meters away. At the same time, the water's resistance helped him absorb a lot of the force. Otherwise, he would have been seriously injured. "I'm fine, just a small injury." Yu Qianzhou looked at the dark golden giant sword in horror. He was speechless. This sword is too domineering. He stopped halfway, and his eyes were a little dazed. "Don't use your divine sense to check it again. Even if it's the remnant of the great god Yi's soul, it's not something you can withstand with your current cultivation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been suppressed for so many years." "You." Immortal Crocodile also paused in shock. The blood that Yu Qianzhou had spat out earlier lingered in the water like a red mist. When the red mist touched the giant sword, the treasure light around the giant sword suddenly stopped. Then, the red mist elongated like a flowing cloud, circled the giant sword once, and began to spiral upwards. When it reached the handguard where the hilt and the body of the sword met, it was suddenly sucked in by the bow-shaped symbol on the handguard. Just as the red mist was sucked in, the bow-shaped symbol suddenly emitted a dazzling golden light and disappeared in a flash. Yu Qianzhou closed his eyes from the piercing pain. When he opened his eyes again, he didn't know if he was imagining things, but he felt that the bow seemed to have become much more lifelike, filled with a tension that was ready to be unleashed. Yu Qianzhou, what did you do to it just now? Immortal Crocodile asked in surprise. Damn it! Old monster, you should ask what it did to me. Yu Qianzhou paused. He suddenly felt as if something on the sword was staring at him. It was as if a pair of deep and frightening eyes were hidden in the sword, silently watching him. He looked carefully, but there was nothing different. He didn't find anything different about the sword, but it made him feel like he was being watched. Yu Qianzhou was holding his breath and observing silently when he suddenly heard a sigh. A deep sigh full of ancient charm reverberated in his ears, making him feel as if he had traveled through time and space to the distant past. The sound gradually dissipated after a long time. Who is it? Don't sneak around. Come out if you dare. Yu Qianzhou looked around vigilantly. Below, Immortal Crocodile's big red eyes were also looking around, full of doubt, but Yu Qianzhou didn't seem to be faking it. He couldn't help but ask, Yu Qianzhou, what's wrong with you? Didn't you hear it just now? Yu Qianzhou looked around vigilantly and asked, someone sighed in my ear just now. Didn't you hear it? His big red eyes paused, and then he looked around again, but he didn't find anything. Immortal Crocodile said strangely, I didn't hear anything. I didn't find anyone either. Are you hallucinating because you were injured just now? Yu Qianzhou looked around and said suspiciously, is that so? You really didn't hear anything? Immortal Crocodile immediately said, isn't my cultivation higher than yours? If you can hear it, how can I not hear it? Stop being so suspicious. Hurry up and think of a way to help me pull the sword out. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou thought about it and felt that it was true, so he withdrew his suspicious and vigilant attitude. He walked up to the giant sword again, tilted his head, and looked around. Indeed, he didn't find anything unusual, but the blood-sucking scene just now inevitably made him suspicious. He carefully stretched out a finger and gently poked the sword. Seeing that there was no reaction, he poked it twice. After confirming that there was no problem, he touched his chest, which was still a little stuffy, and suddenly felt that this injury was too undeserved. I say, Master Yu, what are you waiting for? Hurry up and think of a way to pull it out. Immortal Crocodile couldn't help but urge him again. Shut up, you've been suppressed for so many years, don't you care about this little bit of time? Can't you see that I'm thinking of a way? Yu Qianzhou mercilessly said to him, stroking the dark golden blade with his palm, muttering to himself, it's a little too big, it's a little difficult to cut. If only it could be a little smaller. Immortal Crocodile, who was below, also exclaimed at the same time. The two of them were stunned at the same time. Yu Qianzhou rubbed his eyes in disbelief, thinking that he was hallucinating. He really seemed to have seen the giant sword shrink a little just now. Yu Qianzhou lifted his foot and stomped on Immortal Crocodile below, asking, Old monster, did you feel anything unusual just now? Oh. I felt something unusual. I felt the sword in my body move. Really? Why did I feel like it was a little smaller? The two of them stopped talking at the same time. The bottom of the lake was unusually quiet, and they were both a little suspicious. Finally, Immortal Crocodile asked again, what did you do to it just now? I didn't do anything. Yu Qianzhou's head-scratching hand rested on the sword's blade and said, I just wanted to touch it a little. I hope it's a little smaller so that I can. Ugh. His gaze immediately froze. This time, it seemed that the huge sword had shrunk a little. Below, Immortal Crocodile's voice trembled as it said, "I also feel that it's a little smaller. You seem to be able to control it, control it. Try again and see if you can make it smaller. Let me feel it carefully again." Yu Qianzhou looked at his palm in disbelief and carefully pressed it on the sword. He said weakly, "Make it a little smaller." He retracted his hand and asked in a trembling voice, either excited or afraid, "Old monster, it seems to have shrunk again. Do you feel it?" "Yes, yes, yes." "Try again, make it shrink as much as possible. As long as my pinned life soul escapes, I can escape on my own." Immortal Crocodile was extremely excited. Yu Qianzhou pressed his palm on the sword again and calmed his emotions. He looked up at the outline of the giant sword and said, "Smaller." Sure enough, he clearly saw the giant sword shrink this time. Smaller, smaller, smaller. Immortal Crocodile felt the movement of the giant sword in his body and immediately shouted excitedly with Yu Qianzhou. The more they shouted, the more excited they became. Yu Qianzhou watched as the giant sword shrank rapidly until the hilt reached his shoulder. Suddenly, there was a tremor under his feet, and he stopped shouting. Looking left and right, he saw a huge silvery white body slowly twisting and turning. It looked a little scary. "Old monster, you can move now?" Yu Qianzhou asked in shock. Immortal Crocodile laughed wildly and said, "The giant sword has shrunk and moved away from the life soul that was pinned to my side. I can escape." Yu Qianzhou, "Thank you. Stand still." With a loud shout, the giant crocodile's huge body, which had been lying there for more than 100,000 years, shook. Its huge tail began to shake, and its huge and ferocious head began to raise, its huge and strong limbs began to support itself. The surrounding clear lake water quickly became turbid due to the commotion. Chapter 731. Garland and the others, who were waiting by the shore, suddenly saw waves on the calm surface of the lake. The entire moon lake seemed to be in turmoil. The cannibals retreated in horror, their eyes filled with fear of the unknown. The undercurrent under the lake moved. Yu Qianzhou, who was standing behind the giant crocodile, hurriedly squatted down to reduce the huge resistance his body had to withstand. He grabbed the uneven silver-white armor with both hands to prevent himself from being thrown off. As the giant crocodile's strong limbs slowly lifted up, the giant sword, which had shrunk a lot, slowly sank into the body along with the hilt. Crimson blood stained a large area of the lake. Not long after, the giant crocodile stood up completely, its whole body shining with silver light. All of a sudden, the huge body lying at the bottom of the lake disappeared. Yu Qianzhou looked around in shock, only to see the dark golden giant sword, which was more than 10 meters tall, standing at the bottom of the lake, inserted into a huge rock. There was a groove at the bottom of the lake, created by the huge body. "Yu Qianzhou, shouldn't you come down?" Immortal Lord Crocodile's voice suddenly came from below. Yu Qianzhou looked down and was shocked. He saw himself riding on the shoulder of a person, his hands holding the person's head. How could this be? There was no need to rush him anymore. Yu Qianzhou jumped away, floating in the lake, and looked at the person in front of him suspiciously. This person was tall and well-built. He wore a silver-white robe, and his snow-white hair fluttered in the lake. He was a large man with a pale face and no facial hair. His bright and piercing eyes stared at Yu Qianzhou with a smile. Yu Qianzhou asked carefully, "Old monster, is that you? Do I not look like it?" The other party asked with a smile. Yu Qianzhou floated around him twice, muttering, "Sounds like the voice of an old monster, wah-ha." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his silver hair and laughed wildly. "Yu Qianzhou, it is me. This old man is finally free." Yu Qianzhou was taken aback. He took a few more glances at him before he rolled his eyes and said, What's so funny about being free? Are you afraid that people don't know that you've been suppressed for more than 100,000 years? After saying that, he turned around and floated towards the giant sword. He placed his hand on it and muttered, "Smaller, smaller, smaller." The dark golden giant sword rapidly shrank. The unbridled smile on Immortal Lord Crocodile's face froze, and his mouth fell open. On second thought, getting out of trouble should be something to be happy about, right? Why did it seem like he was shameless after hearing what this kid said? He opened his mouth and wanted to be happy, but he found that he couldn't smile at all. Immortal Lord Crocodile's facial muscles twitched. He closed his mouth and looked at the huge mark at the bottom of the lake. He sighed. He had been trapped for 100,000 years. Indeed, there was nothing funny about it. She should feel sad instead. Sigh. With a long sigh, Immortal Lord Crocodile turned to look at Yu Qianqiu, only to find that Yu Qianqiu had disappeared. Just as he was feeling strange, he saw Yu Qianqiu jump out of the crack at the bottom of the lake. The crack was the wide hole that the giant sword had pierced into the rock at the bottom of the lake. Yu Qianqiu was holding an ancient dark golden sword in his hand. He was stroking it with a look of curiosity. Immortal Lord Crocodile's pupils shrank as he stared at the sword in Yu Qianqiu's hand. He was all too familiar with this sword. It was the divine sword that the myriad swords demon lord used to suppress him. Yu Qianqiu inadvertently caught a glimpse of his eyes. He immediately hugged the sword and said in a low voice, "What are you trying to do? Let me tell you, we have a blood alliance. This sword is mine now. Don't you dare try anything funny." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and said, "Don't misunderstand. I'm just curious how you can pick it up so easily with your cultivation. Can you really control it?" Yu Qianqiu asked suspiciously, "You really won't snatch it?" Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Why would I snatch it? Although this sword is good, not everyone can control it. If I'm not careful, I might get hurt by it. Even if it falls into my hands, it's no better than an ordinary immortal treasure. Besides, I can't even thank you enough. Why would I snatch something from you? I'm just curious how you can control this divine sword." Yu Qianqiu stroked the sword and said proudly, "Blood test. You've never heard of it, right? This is called fate. Blood test my ass. It's been stuck in my body for so many years, and I've lost at least a few hundred kilograms of blood. But I've never seen it recognize me." Although Immortal Lord Crocodile said this, with his experience, he had already guessed that what Yu Qianqiu said was true. This divine sword must have recognized him as its master, a branch of the heaven-splitting arrow, a divine sword possessed by the remnant of the great god Yi's soul, had recognized this kid as its master. Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Yu Qianqiu with a complicated expression. He couldn't tell what he was feeling. There was jealousy, envy, and amazement. In fact, as he said, not everyone could control this divine weapon. It had nothing to do with cultivation. Only those who were recognized by the divine weapon had the right to control it. Immortal Lord Crocodile had a vague guess. This kid might have been recognized by the remnant of the great god Yi's soul, which was why he could control this sword. Otherwise, with his cultivation, it would be difficult for him to pick it up so easily. Although he knew everything, he just didn't want to say it. Yu Qianqiu held the sword and touched it. He couldn't bear to part with it. He laughed and said, "Good stuff. Good stuff. I don't know how powerful it is, but it can't be wrong. If I don't like anyone else, I'll try it on them." In fact, he didn't know what was so good about the divine sword, but he kept praising it. "Yu Qianqiu, I advise you not to take this thing out. I won't snatch it from you, but it doesn't mean that others won't." Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly. "If it were 100,000 years ago, I would definitely snatch it. However, I've been silent with it for 100,000 years, and I know a little about it. The power of the great god E is inviolable, and I don't think I can control it. However, others don't think so. The treasure left behind by the great god E had once shown its power in the hands of 10,000 swords. This is something that everyone knows. Once people know that you have a divine sword, I'm afraid that not many people can resist its temptation. You'll be in big trouble then. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He immediately put away the divine sword and looked around, as if he was afraid of being seen. Immortal Lord Crocodile's silver hair fluttered in the wind. He shook his head and said, "You know better." He really couldn't understand why the divine sword would recognize Yu Qianzhou as its master. "Thank you for the reminder." Yu Qianzhou chuckled. He suddenly frowned and asked, "Old monster, I've already helped you get out of trouble. Shouldn't you tell me about the purple flame?" Immortal Lord Crocodile was stunned. He said awkwardly, "Actually, I don't know where the purple flame is." "What?" Yu Qianzhou's face immediately fell. He said in a low voice, "Old monster, you lied to me? Don't be anxious. Let me finish what I'm saying. Although I don't know the exact location of the purple flame, I know its rough location. Do you want to hear it?" A smile immediately appeared on Yu Qianzhou's face. He nodded repeatedly and said, "I want to hear it, I want to hear it. Tell me quickly." Immortal Lord Crocodile said in a low voice, "It said that the reason why the Myriad Swords Demon Lord was able to set up the heaven and earth formation here was because he relied on the infinite power of the purple flame. The purple flame is also the source of power supporting the entire heaven and earth formation. This should be true. Otherwise, the heaven and earth formation wouldn't be able to trap so many immortal and netherworld experts. Based on this deduction, the purple flames should be supporting the operation of the entire formation in this sealed continent." Chapter 732. Yu Qianzhou was pleasantly surprised. The purple fire is inside the heaven and earth universe formation? It should be. I'm almost certain. Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded. Yu Qianzhou was extremely excited. Just think about it, the Samadhi true flame was a taboo even for immortal emperors and underworld kings. Once he obtained it, he would be able to do whatever he wanted in the mortal world, let alone other places. Just thinking about it made him excited. His eyes lit up. He rubbed his hands and asked, "Old monster, where do you think the purple fire is in the formation?" "I don't know," Immortal Lord Crocodile answered readily. Yu Qianzhou's smile froze. The East Holy Land is so big. If you don't have a rough location, how am I supposed to find it? I really don't know. How do you want me to answer? Moreover, I only promised to tell you about the purple fire. I didn't say that I would definitely find it. I've already fulfilled my promise. Immortal Lord Crocodile said calmly, "Now it's time for you to fulfill your promise. Take me out of this damned place sealed by the heaven and earth universe formation." Yu Qianzhou was furious. He felt like he had been tricked. He waved his sleeves and said, "I did promise to take you out, but I didn't say when. We'll talk about it when I'm free." It was impolite not to reciprocate. However, as soon as he finished speaking, a majestic aura burst forth from Immortal Lord Crocodile's body. The surrounding water instantly formed a transparent shield, wrapping around Yu Qianzhou. Like shackles, the huge pressure shocked Yu Qianzhou. He said in a low voice, "Old monster, what's the meaning of this? I've already warned you not to lie to me. Otherwise, I'd rather suffer the backlash of the Alliance blood than let you go." Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly increased the pressure on Yu Qianzhou. The transparent shield continued to apply pressure. Yu Qianzhou narrowed his eyes. He slowly moved his palm toward the water shield and pressed it. He suddenly shouted, "Break!" The water shield, which was as hard as steel, shook and silently collapsed. It merged with the surrounding lake water. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes widened as he sized up Yu Qianzhou curiously. Given his cultivation level, it should have been impossible for him to break through the pressure exerted by his water-dispelling spell, but he had done so easily. What surprised him the most was that he didn't feel the slightest resistance of power or cultivation, and the water barrier just silently shattered. Yu Qianzhou stared at him and said coldly, "I advise you not to threaten me with force. As long as I don't want to die, no matter how high your cultivation is, you can't do anything to me." "Oh." Immortal Lord Crocodile's silvery white robes fluttered in the wind as he said indifferently, "Then I shall give it a try." "There's no need to try. If I say you can't, then you can't." Yu Qianzhou casually waved his hand and said, "Besides, I don't want to suffer the backlash of the Alliance blood. There's no need for me to die with you. I can send you out now, but I have to warn you first. After leaving the Holy East Lands, you'd better not cause trouble in the human world. Otherwise, I will make you regret escaping this place at all costs." Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled faintly. He didn't think that Yu Qianzhou could do anything to him. Instead, he took Yu Qianzhou's threat as words of pride. He nodded and said, "Don't worry, I have no interest in the human world. After leaving this Holy East Lands, I will cancel the blood alliance with you and immediately return to the celestial world. From then on, we will have nothing to do with each other. As for the matter of you obtaining the divine sword, I will not reveal it to anyone. Just pretend that we've never met." Yu Qianzhou was slightly stunned. He didn't think that the blood alliance could be cancelled. But this was good too. With his current strength, it was indeed wishful thinking to control the other party. His previous plan was a little too wishful thinking. He nodded and said, "All right, we'll talk about getting out of here when we get ashore. There are some things that you need to pay attention to. Don't ruin my plans." He immediately told him some things. After listening to him, Immortal Lord Crocodile pondered for a while and agreed. The sun shone brightly on the Moon Lake, and it regained its calm. Garland and the others, who were waiting by the shore, no longer held any hope for Yu Qianzhou's survival. Hence, the shore became busy again. The hundreds of crocodile corpses were enough to keep them busy for a while. But to them, it was also a rich source of food. If they stored it, it would be enough to last them for a long time. A few people stayed behind to guard the lake, while the others gathered in groups of 3 to 5 to pull out the spears and dismember the crocodiles. It was not safe to stay near the lake, and no one knew if the monster would appear again. From today onwards, no one among the cannibals would dare to bathe in the Moon Lake anymore. At this moment, the people on the shore suddenly shouted excitedly, He's still alive." Everyone looked over and saw a head emerge from the lake. It was gradually rising from the lake and wading slowly to the shore. If it was not Yu Qianzhou, who else could it be? Garland, who was talking to a few children, turned her head and her beautiful eyes lit up. She didn't care about anything else and dashed towards the lake. She rushed into the water and jumped onto Yu Qianzhou's wet body. Her two beautiful legs wrapped around Yu Qianzhou's waist. Yu Qianzhou supported her subconsciously and hugged her plump buttocks. He was really speechless. "I'm very traditional." Oh. Oh. The people by the lake were instantly excited. They raised their arms and cheered. The children even jumped up and down. This was the warmest welcome for the warrior's return. No one expected that Yu Qianzhou, who had been in the lake for a night, could still come back alive. Suddenly, the cheers stopped. Everyone's eyes were fixed on something not far behind Yu Qianzhou. They saw another person rising from the lake. His long silver hair was wet and stuck to his cheeks. His silver-white robe was wet and stuck to his burly body. His face was fierce and cold. Garland, who was hugging Yu Qianzhou's head and pressing it against her full breasts, was stunned. Yu Qianzhou struggled to free his head from her full breasts and almost suffocated. He turned to look at Immortal Crocodile behind him and said, "Thanks to his help, we killed the monster in the lake. From now on, this peaceful lake will belong to you cannibals forever." After saying that, he pulled Garland away from him and put her down. The people on the shore looked at each other and suddenly burst into cheers. They danced happily on the spot. No one wanted to leave this mother lake that had raised them for countless generations. They were used to having sex by the lake and giving birth to their next generation. They really didn't want to leave this place. Bolli waved his arm, and the cannibals rushed to the lake, splashing water everywhere. Yu Qianqiu was lifted and thrown into the sky by a group of people. They caught him when he landed and threw him up again to show their respect for the brave warrior who protected their home. Some people surrounded Immortal Crocodile. A few strong young men stretched out their arms and grabbed Immortal Crocodile's thighs, trying to lift him up. Unexpectedly, he was as solid as a rock. He stood upright in the water and couldn't be lifted at all. Just as they were surprised, they heard Snow Lord Crocodile yell, "Get out of my way!" His gaze fell on the group of crocodile corpses on the shore, and a faint murderous aura emanated from him, scaring the group of people. Everyone's eyes were on him. They didn't know why this brave warrior was so heartless. Yu Qianqiu, who was being held by the crowd, frowned and said, "Old Snow Lord. They don't mean any harm." In fact, he was secretly reminding him not to forget what he had told them below. The word Snow Lord sounded like a woman, and Immortal Crocodile's facial muscles twitched. He glanced at the crowd, then stared at Yu Qianqiu and said, "I'm not used to having too many people. You should finish what you promised me first." He had promised Yu Qianqiu that he wouldn't attack the cannibals in the lake, and he would accompany Yu Qianqiu to put on a show. However, the crocodile corpses on the shore were too conspicuous. If he stayed any longer, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to control himself. Yu Qianqiu followed his gaze, and when he saw the crocodile corpses on the shore, he suddenly understood everything. He struggled to get the people who were carrying him to put him down. He walked up to Garland and smiled. "He helped me kill the monster in the lake, and I promised to help him a little. I'm afraid I have to leave for a while. I'll be back again." After saying that, he waved at Immortal Crocodile and walked towards the shore. Immortal Crocodile pushed through the crowd and followed. Because of his murderous look, the crowd fell silent. The cannibals didn't say anything, and they silently watched the two figures disappear into the depths of the forest on the side of the mountain. In the dense forest, the sunlight shone through the branches and leaves, dazzling the eyes. The two of them walked, one in front of the other. Immortal Crocodile, who was walking behind, stretched out his arms, his broad palms constantly touching the branches and leaves that brushed past him. He carefully took each step, listening to the rustling sound of the thick leaves under his feet. His expression was a little dazed, as if he was in a dream. He suddenly stopped and asked, "Yu Qianqiu, have I really escaped? Am I dreaming?" Returning to the human world and seeing the lush greenery and beautiful sunlight once again, he found that it was a little surreal. Yu Qianqiu, who was walking in front, stopped and turned to look at Immortal Crocodile. He shook his head slightly and revealed a pitiful expression. "You have indeed escaped from the lake, and it was I who saved you, you ungrateful fellow. I understand how you feel, but it has nothing to do with me now, and I won't comfort you. I just want to ask you, after you leave the Holy East Lands, do you really have the confidence to leave the human world and return to the celestial world?" Immortal Crocodile recovered from his daze and said in a low voice, "This is not something you should worry about. I naturally have a way to return to the celestial world. You just need to bring me out of the heaven and earth universe formation." "Oh?" A mocking smile appeared on Yu Qianqiu's face. He looked around, and after confirming that there was no one else, he nodded slightly. "All right, then let's do it here." After that, he took out a few small silver balls from his storage pouch. He muttered an incantation and shot out a silver light from his hand, scattering the silver balls in all directions. Then, he made a messy hand seal that even he didn't know what it was. Immortal Crocodile was confused. He tilted his head to listen, trying to hear what he was muttering, but it was like a secret language. Even with his experience, he couldn't understand a single word. When Yu Qianzhou stopped, he finally couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" Yu Qianzhou rolled his eyes and said mockingly, "You've lived for so many years, yet you can't even tell that I'm setting up a formation?" Setting up a formation? What formation? Immortal Crocodile was taken aback. He looked suspiciously at the few silver balls hidden in the thick grass. If they were setting up an array, why didn't he sense any energy fluctuations? Was there such an array formation technique in the world? Chapter 733. You haven't seen it before, right? Yu Qianzhou winked and said, "Don't underestimate it. Let me tell you, this is a teleportation array I created myself. Don't you want to get out of the Holy East Lands? This array can teleport you to the outside of the Holy East Lands. That's how I came in." In his previous life, he seemed to have seen this saying in some random novel, so he casually used it to fool this old monster. Teleportation array? Immortal Lord Crocodile's mind was in a daze. He racked his brains to think. Unfortunately, he did not remember the legend of this array. He looked suspiciously at the smug Yu Qianzhou. To be honest, he still somewhat believed it. This was because when Yu Qianzhou broke his water control technique in the lake, his method was very strange. He did not feel any movement at all, and the water control technique was quietly broken. Now, he did not feel any energy fluctuations when he set up the array. In short, although Yu Qianzhou's cultivation was not high, he felt that it was a little strange. Coupled with the strange thing about the divine sword recognizing its master, Yu Qianzhou seemed a little mysterious in his eyes. "Come, stand beside me. Let's get ready to go." Yu Qianzhou pointed to his side, which made Immortal Lord Crocodile a little nervous. He had never played with this thing before, so he did not know whether it was dangerous or not. He weakly stood beside Yu Qianzhou, carefully looked around, and asked, "Is this okay?" Yu Qianzhou stared at him expressionlessly and said indifferently, "Don't blame me for not reminding you. Close your eyes first, hold your breath, and don't move. Otherwise, don't blame me if you encounter any danger during the teleportation." Close my eyes? Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately became vigilant. "You won't do anything to harm me, will you?" Yu Qianzhou said disdainfully, measuring the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a vile person. "Do you think that everyone is as ungrateful as you? Have you forgotten that we formed a blood alliance? What's the difference between harming you and harming myself?" After hearing what he said, Immortal Lord Crocodile thought about it and agreed. If Yu Qianzhou harmed him, he would definitely suffer the backlash of the alliance blood. He probably would not do anything out of line. So he nodded with ease and said, "Then let's start." After that, he consciously closed his eyes. Yu Qianzhou raised half of his brows and said in an enigmatic tone, "Old monster, I'll say it again. If you open your eyes halfway and something happens to you, it won't be my fault. If something happens to you, don't blame me." As he said that, he released his divine sense and enveloped the old man. Immortal Crocodile naturally felt that he had been enveloped by his divine sense. His eyes moved, and he wanted to open them, but he forced himself not to. He nodded and said, "I'll listen to your arrangements." He paused, keenly sensing that the surroundings had changed. Yu Qianzhou had also withdrawn his divine sense. What puzzled him the most was that he could still hear the sound of waves crashing against the shore. A gust of wind blew over, carrying the fishy and salty smell of the sea. Immortal Lord Crocodile was shocked. Could there really be such a magical array in this world? He really wanted to open his eyes and take a look, but he was afraid that something might happen. The sea breeze continued to blow, suddenly becoming stronger and blowing away the fog in front of him. On the mountain peak, Yu Qianzhou silently looked at the vast continent in front of him that was covered in fog. He said quietly, "Old monster, I've fulfilled my promise. You can open your eyes now." Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes suddenly opened, and he quickly looked around. His gaze swept across the endless deep blue sea, the island he was standing on, and the vast continent covered in fog. His pupils shrank, and he said in a daze, This is the island opposite the East Holy Land. I've seen it before. The shock in his heart was indescribable. He had really escaped from the continent that was sealed by the East Holy Land. How was this possible? He turned his head with difficulty and looked at the calm Yu Qianzhou beside him. He realized that the young man in front of him was so unfathomable. It was as if he had divine means. So many top experts from both the netherworld and immortal world could not do it, but he had done it, and so easily. Yu Qianzhou did not move and said calmly, That's right. This is the island opposite the East Holy Land. It's now called Xian Island. He put his hands behind his back and imitated by Changchun's words and actions. He did have the demeanor of an expert. At this moment, an angry shout suddenly came from the island. Who dares to trespass on my Xian Island? A figure shot over quickly. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at him and waved his hand disdainfully. A huge silver palm shadow with the aura of rolling thunder appeared out of nowhere. It swatted the figure back like a fly. Yu Qianzhou happened to turn around and was immediately dumbfounded. He recognized the person who had barged in angrily. It was Patriarch Nan Ming. That palm strike was probably going to be tough for him. He quickly stopped Immortal Lord Crocodile and said, Don't attack. He's one of us. Immortal Lord Crocodile's raised palm paused for a moment before he put it down again. Patriarch Nan Ming, who had been smashed into the ground by the palm strike, immediately coughed up a few mouthfuls of blood and crawled out. He looked battered and exhausted. He pulled out a golden net from his storage bag to defend himself. He looked at the mountain peak in shock. The power of that palm strike was too strong. He was enveloped by that aura, and he did not even have a chance to escape. He could not imagine who in the cultivation world could have such a high cultivation. Senior Nan Ming, it's all a misunderstanding. Patriarch Nan Ming was stunned. There were two people on the mountain peak, and one of them was Yu Qianzhou. He was waving his hand and apologizing to him. His figure flashed, and he resisted the discomfort in his body as he flew toward the mountain peak again. He ignored Yu Qianzhou, who was laughing apologetically, and locked his gaze on the silver-haired and silver-clothed burly man. The other party was even taller and stronger than him, and he looked at him as if he was looking at an ant. His eyes were filled with disdain. His temperament, especially, was rarely seen in the world. Patriarch Nan Ming was shocked. Putting aside the fact that he could not see through the other party's cultivation, the power of that strike was even more terrifying. Based on his experience, he had never seen such a person in the cultivation world. Suddenly, he coughed twice, and he could not help but spit out a lump of extravasated blood in his chest. Senior Nan Ming, are you all right? Yu Qianzhou hurried over to support him. Patriarch Nan Ming was already quite injured, but he still wanted to save face and shook his head. It's just a small injury, it's nothing. He stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile and asked, Your cultivation is very high. May I know which expert has come to visit my Xian Island? It was clearly a compliment, but a hint of bitterness flashed across Immortal Lord Crocodile's face. Was his current cultivation still considered high? It had already fallen from mid-stage Immortal Emperor to late-stage Exalted Immortal. Who knew how many years it would take for him to recover his previous cultivation? He closed his eyes slightly and said, Your Xian Island? When I came here, this island did not have a master yet. As he spoke, he lifted his hand slightly, and his silk-like sleeves shook open to reveal a golden bracelet. A white light flashed from it. A small porcelain bottle appeared in Immortal Lord Crocodile's hand. He threw it to Patriarch Nan Ming and said, I did not know that you were acquainted with Yu Qianzhou just now. Your injuries are not light, take this to heal. One is enough. He was obviously giving face to Yu Qianzhou. Yu Qianzhou's expression froze. He stared at the golden bracelet on Immortal Lord Crocodile's wrist. His eyes shone brightly, but he was pulled back to reality by Patriarch Nan Ming, who was holding the porcelain bottle. Seeing Patriarch Nan Ming's questioning look, he immediately smiled awkwardly and explained, "This is my friend, his name is Yi Shuijun. The two of us traveled around the world and happened to come to this place to rest. We did not expect to have a misunderstanding with you. Please do not take it to heart, it is purely a misunderstanding." Yi Shuijun? Patriarch Nan Ming was stunned. He had never heard of such a person in the cultivation world. He tilted his head to look at Yu Qianzhou with a face full of suspicion. He had long heard from Nongzhu that this fellow had remarkable abilities. It seemed that Nongzhu was not lying. He did not know when this fellow had made such a powerful friend. It seemed that he had suffered today's injuries for nothing. But then again, even if he was not Yu Qianzhou's friend, he would not be able to seek justice. The other party was too powerful. That. Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly and said, "Senior, you should go back and heal for the time being. We have some private things to discuss when we borrow your precious land." He was tactfully persuading him to retreat. Patriarch Nan Ming was not an ignorant person. With a face full of doubts and a stomach full of anger, he turned around and rushed down the mountain. Yi Shuijun stared blankly at the misty East Holy Land, giving people a strange feeling of loss. Patriarch Nan Ming's compliments made him think of many things in an instant. The excitement he felt after escaping from the lake and the East Holy Land was gone in an instant. He was thinking, with his current cultivation, even if he returned to the immortal world, could he really restore his former glory as one of the 12 great immortal monarchs? With the cultivation of a mere exalted immortal, he might not even be qualified to stand firm in the immortal world. He knew Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's character very well. He would never take care of a useless person. Perhaps he really had to start from scratch. Only he, who had experienced it, could understand the hardships. Yu Qianzhou stared at him silently for a while. His eyes turned, and he smiled faintly. "Old monster, aren't you going back to the immortal world? How are you going to go back?" "Yes. I'm going back." His voice was very soft, as if he was talking to himself. It was full of desolation. "Huh. I haven't seen the scene of ascending to the immortal world. Why don't you take me with you?" Yu Qianzhou asked with a sincere smile. Immortal Crocodile looked back at him blankly and nodded, feeling like his soul had left his body. He said, "Okay." He directly grabbed his arm, turned into a stream of light, and shot into the sky. The protective formation of Xian Island was useless. It was easily pierced through like a paper window. This scene caused Patriarch Nan Ming, who was sitting cross-legged at the foot of the mountain, to feel a toothache. He lowered his head and pulled out the stopper of the porcelain bottle in his hand. A strange fragrance assailed his nostrils. Just a whiff of it made him feel refreshed. He poured it into his palm. There were only 6 pills the size of a thumb. They had a faint white glow, and the surroundings were immediately filled with a strange fragrance. Patriarch Nan Ming's eyes lit up. With his experience, he naturally knew that these pills were not ordinary. He put 5 pills back and held one in his hand, hesitating. They could fly so fast. However, he could imagine that if Immortal Lord Crocodile had not been carrying him, and if his cultivation had not fallen so much, his flying speed would have been unbelievably fast. Looking at the direction they were heading and the terrain below, Yu Qianzhou had vaguely guessed where Immortal Lord Crocodile was going, and they were almost there. As he thought about it, he could already see the colorful fog in the distant sky. In the blink of an eye, the two of them landed on the desolate Gobi Desert. Opposite them was the majestic colorful fog. Yu Qianzhou seemed to be moving his hands and feet casually, but his eyes were observing the expressions of the people around him. Immortal Lord Crocodile was completely stunned. He looked at the place in front of him that was sealed by the colorful fog in disbelief. After a long time, he cried out, "Soul transformation smoke. It's actually the soul transformation smoke. This place is actually sealed by the soul transformation smoke. Oh my God! Who can tell me what's going on?" Chapter 734. Yu Qianchou stood silently at the side. He didn't know what was going on, but after talking to Bai Changchun that night, he knew it was the work of Demon Lord Thousand Swords. He seemed to be specially used to trap the immortals in the immortal world. That madman was too vengeful, and he wouldn't let others have an easy time even if he died. This was a secret, and he couldn't tell Immortal Lord Crocodile. Am I seeing things? Why is there so much soul-transforming smoke here? Who did this? Immortal Lord Crocodile muttered to himself in shock. He turned around and asked, "Yu Qianchou, do you know what's going on here?" "What do you mean what's going on?" Yu Qianchou said disapprovingly. "This place has always been like this. I don't know how long it's been here, but we've always called this place the Fog Forest." "Why? Is there something wrong? Always been like this?" Immortal Lord Crocodile was speechless, and his face darkened as he pondered. Yu Qianchou waited silently for a while, then asked, "What is this soul-transforming smoke you speak of?" Immortal Crocodile suddenly raised his head and stared at the ever-changing seven-colored mist. He said in a daze, "That colorful mist is the soul formation smoke, which is extremely poisonous. Once you come into contact with it, no matter how high your cultivation level is, it will be useless. I don't know where this thing came from. Even in the immortal world, it rarely appears. Most people have only heard of it, and I've only seen it once. Why is it here? And it's so big, and it's been gathering here for a long time. So powerful." Yu Qianchou exclaimed, then asked knowingly, "Old monster, what are you doing here? Is this place related to your trip to the immortal world?" Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at the fog forest and nodded slightly. "There's a passage connecting the immortal world and the mortal world here. It's called the Immortal Ascension Stage. I was about to use the Immortal Ascension Stage to ascend to the immortal world, but who knew this place would be sealed by the soul-transforming smoke? Heavens! If the people of the immortal world descended without knowing anything, then wouldn't it be a trap? It was definitely a trap. Who did it? This is too vicious. Since you want to go back to the celestial realm so badly, why don't you think of another way? Is there any other way to get to the immortal world?" Yu Qianchou comforted. In fact, he also wanted to know if there was any other way. Suddenly, an eagle circled in the sky. Immortal Lord Crocodile raised his hand without even looking, and the eagle was instantly pulled down by him. It drew an arc in the air and flew into the colorful fog, then flew out and stopped in front of the two of them. At first, the eagle could be seen struggling in the air, but after a while, the color of the eagle's feathers became brighter and brighter. Finally, like a specimen, it froze and stopped moving. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed slightly and retracted his hand into his sleeve. The eagle fell to the ground and turned into a puddle of pitch-black water. Other than the Immortal Ascension Stage, there are other ways to get to the immortal world through the underworld and the demon world. Forget about the demon world, it's basically impossible to enter. And the underworld's emperor of the underworld has never been on good terms with the immortal emperor. If I barge in without the underworld's permission, only death awaits me. With my current cultivation level, don't even think about it." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head helplessly. "Unless my cultivation level is so high that I can shatter the void and open a new path. But then again, if my cultivation reaches that level, no one will be able to stop me if I want to pass through the netherworld. Then what should we do?" Yu Qianchou said with a look of pity. "If that's the case, doesn't that mean you can't go back?" "We'll see." Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed and turned to face him. "You don't owe me anything anymore. I'll teach you how to break the blood oath. From now on, we have nothing to do with each other." Seeing his disheartened look, Yu Qianzhou laughed and patted his shoulder. Old monster, don't be discouraged. There must be a way. Maybe we just don't know about it yet. Since the blood oath hasn't been broken, do me a favor first. After dawdling for so long, he finally got to the point. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes turned cold. He stared at the hand patting his shoulder and said indifferently, if you have something to say, say it. Obviously, he was not impressed by Yu Qianzhou's actions. Yu Qianzhou sheepishly withdrew his affectionate hand and said with a chuckle, you also know that I want to find the purple flame. Why don't you accompany me to the Eastern Holy Land? You can go by yourself. Why drag me along? Moreover, I don't know where the purple flames are, Immortal Lord Crocodile said expressionlessly. Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly. Have you forgotten? You're not the only one sealed in the Heaven and Earth Qiankuan formation. There are many old friends of yours inside. It's too dangerous for me to barge in there with my cultivation level. You mean you want me to protect you? Immortal Lord Crocodile snorted. You've got the wrong idea. Even if I want to help you, I'm afraid I won't be able to. If my old friends are still in the East Holy Land, I won't be able to protect you with my current cultivation level. How is that possible? Yu Qianzhou was shocked. Aren't you old friends? If there's any trouble, you can just tell them. After all, you used to be one of the 12 great immortal lords, second only to the immortal emperor. Don't tell me they won't give you face? Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed coldly. After a while, he asked, what do you think I relied on to rise up in the celestial world? I climbed up step by stepping on the corpses and shoulders of others. I've offended countless people. If they find out that my cultivation level has fallen to such a level, think about the consequences. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. As expected, where there were people, there would be grudges. The celestial world was no exception. After a moment's hesitation, he suddenly looked up at Immortal Lord Crocodile and said in a low voice, are you afraid of them? If I were you, I would definitely take back the glory that once belonged to me, not hide. If you don't even dare to face the East Holy Land, why do you want to return to the celestial world? If you ask me, the East Holy Land is the place where you can start anew. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes flashed as he stared at Yu Qianzhou. An uncontrollable aura circulated around him. After a long while, he retracted his aura and narrowed his eyes. Although I know you're trying to provoke me, but... I agree. Yu Qianzhou was delighted. He didn't care if Immortal Lord Crocodile saw through his provocation. As long as he agreed, it was fine. He took out a few silver balls and prepared to set up a formation. Unexpectedly, Immortal Lord Crocodile shouted, wait. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He raised his head and frowned. Are you going back on your word again? Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. You don't look like someone who knows his place. Before we go, let's dissolve the blood oath first. Otherwise, if you keep causing trouble, won't I be dragged down to death by you? Yu Qianzhou opened his mouth but was speechless. It was really difficult to control this old monster. However, he couldn't force him, so he could only nod and agree. Then, Immortal Lord Crocodile began to teach him how to dissolve the blood oath. After spending some time to learn it, the two of them cut the blood talismans drawn on their palms at the same time. They put their left palms together and chanted to use their magic power. A bloody light flashed across their bodies and flowed from their left arms to their palms. After the two bloody lights met on their left palms, they suddenly exploded with red light and disappeared. The two of them withdrew their left hands at the same time. There was a pool of blood in their palms. Yu Qianzhou shook off the blood on his palms and said angrily, are you satisfied now? Immortal Lord Crocodile's face was cold, as if nothing had happened. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He flicked out a few small silver balls and pretended to set up the array. After he was done, he pointed to his side and gestured for Immortal Lord Crocodile to stand up and prepare to leave. Unexpectedly, Immortal Lord Crocodile looked puzzled. He stared at the few small silver balls on the ground and said suspiciously, "I remember that you used 6 silver balls to set up the array. Now you only used 5. Are you sure this is okay? Could it be that you made a mistake?" Yu Qianzhou's face twitched. He didn't expect Immortal Lord Crocodile to be so observant. Even he himself had forgotten how many silver balls he had used earlier. He said angrily, "I know better than you how to set up the array." Immortal Lord Crocodile thought about it and stopped talking. He just looked at him deeply, then silently stood beside him and closed his eyes. In the blink of an eye, he felt the surroundings change. He heard Yu Qianzhou's voice. "It's done." Thus, when he opened his eyes, he discovered that he had returned to the forest where he had left the Eastern Holy Land. Immortal Lord Crocodile was amazed when he saw the magic of the teleportation array again. He followed Yu Qianzhou, who was walking out of the forest, and said, "Yu Qianzhou, if it's possible, can you teach me this array?" Yu Qianzhou walked through the forest and said without looking back, "It's not that I don't want to teach you, but you can't learn it at all. I'll tell you the reason when I have the chance. You'll know then." Seeing that he was unwilling to teach, Immortal Lord Crocodile didn't say anything more. After the two walked out of the green forest, they saw the shining moon lake. Their eyes moved and were attracted by the situation at the bottom of the brown stone mountain. They saw many cannibals surrounding a tent. They didn't know what was going on. They looked at each other and felt a little curious, so they quickened their pace. Someone saw them from afar, and someone immediately exclaimed, "The warrior is back! The warrior is back!" The crowd outside the tent looked over. Garland was the first to squeeze through the crowd. She ran straight into Yu Qianzhou's arms without any hesitation. She hugged Yu Qianzhou's head and kissed him. Passion was like fire. Yu Qianzhou felt a little overwhelmed and quickly pushed her away. He pointed to the tent that everyone was surrounding and asked, "Garland, what happened over there?" Garland immediately said, "An immortal was injured. He fell into Moon Lake while flying from the sky and bled a lot. When the tribesmen fished him out, he was unconscious, but he's awake now. He won't let us go near him and is sleeping cross-legged in the tent." An injured immortal? Yu Qianzhou and Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at each other and immediately let Garland lead them over. When they arrived at the tent, Immortal Lord Crocodile opened the tent without hesitation. Yu Qianzhou followed in, while the others were obviously afraid of the immortal and did not dare to enter. When Yu Qianzhou saw the person sitting cross-legged in the tent, he was shocked. The injured immortal was none other than his master, Bai Changchun. Chapter 735. Bai Changchun, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly opened his eyes. When he saw Immortal Lord Crocodile, his eyes immediately became spirited and full of fighting spirit. When his gaze landed on Yu Qianzhou, he was startled. After sizing them up, he retracted his fighting spirit and slowly closed his eyes. He could probably tell that the two of them were in cahoots. Yu Qianzhou was extremely shocked. Although he knew that there were experts from both the Netherworld and the Immortal World in the Eastern Holy Land, Bai Changchun was simply an invincible legend in his heart. He was already used to his status as the world's #1 expert. He never imagined that he would be injured, and from the looks of it, his injuries were not clear. His symbolic green robe had been torn in many places, especially between his chest and abdomen. There was a large hole in it, and blood could be seen. A palm-sized wound could be seen. It was unknown what caused the wound. The bottom of the green robe was stained with blood, and it had already dried to a dark red color. Although his thin face was still full of arrogance, it looked somewhat pale. Yu Qianzhou was agitated. He quickly turned around and set up a soundproof barrier in the tent. Then, he squatted down gently and half-knelt beside Bai Changchun. He gritted his teeth and said, "Master, who injured you?" Bai Changchun did not say a word and did not reply. He quietly regulated his breathing and healed his injuries. Immortal Lord Crocodile was a little surprised. "Yu Qianqiu, he is your master?" Seeing that Yu Qianqiu nodded and admitted it, he could not help but carefully size up Bai Changchun. In the end, he was shocked to find that he could not see through Bai Changchun's cultivation. His current cultivation was at the late stage exalted immortal. Based on this, wouldn't the injured person's cultivation be higher than his? But the strange thing was that he could tell at a glance that the injured person's physical body was not an immortal body, but a human body. How could a human body withstand such a high cultivation? This was too unbelievable. His eyes flickered and fell on Yu Qianqiu. He was slightly stunned and immediately thought that he understood. He also couldn't see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation, but this kid was only at the crossing calamity stage. Yu Qianqiu and the injured person were master and disciple. In that case, the master and disciple belonged to the same sect. They must have practiced some strange magic art, which was why people couldn't see through them. Otherwise, the mortal body would not be able to withstand such a powerful cultivation. Seeing that his master did not reply, Yu Qianqiu said anxiously, "Master, I think I should bring you back first. This damned place isn't suitable for healing. Instead, it will consume true essence." After waiting for a while, his master still did not speak. Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth and was about to forcefully bring him back to the demon region when he suddenly saw Bai Changchun let out a sigh of relief. He opened his eyes and stared at Immortal Crocodile. Late-stage exalted immortal cultivation. "Who are you?" When he said this, Immortal Crocodile was shocked. He could see through his cultivation. Was his cultivation really higher than his? However, from Immortal Crocodile's slightly suspicious look at Yu Qianqiu, it was clear that he suspected Yu Qianqiu had revealed his identity. Before he could reply, Yu Qianqiu explained to Bai Changchun, "Master, he is a new friend I met. He was originally one of the 12 great immortal lords in the celestial world, Immortal Crocodile." Bai Changchun was moved when he heard this. He looked at Immortal Crocodile and said in a low voice, "According to what I know, there are 2 immortal lords in the celestial world who are in charge of this continent now. Their cultivation has reached the mid-stage immortal emperor. But I see that your cultivation is only at the late-stage exalted immortal. Why is that?" From what he said, it seemed that he had done a lot of research on the East Holy Land. Immortal Crocodile fell into deep thought and muttered to himself, "There are actually 2 alive. I wonder who they are." Yu Qianqiu quickly explained to Bai Changchun how he had rescued Immortal Crocodile. Only then did Bai Changchun's doubts disappear. Bai Changchun looked at Immortal Crocodile with some sympathy. He didn't expect this person to be suppressed for 100,000 years. He nodded slightly and said, "I see." However, he looked at Yu Qianqiu with a strange look. This disciple of his was considered a talent. He really dared to barge into any place. He really had to give it to him. "Master, I think I should bring you back to treat your injuries." "It's not safe here," Yu Qianqiu said anxiously. He knew that someone who could injure Bai Changchun to this extent must be an expert from the celestial world. Since he had already fought with someone from the celestial world, this place was definitely not safe anymore. Perhaps someone would come to search later. Unexpectedly, Bai Changchun shook his head indifferently and said, "Gain or lose is my fate. Since I'm here, I won't go back easily. Don't say anything more. I know what I'm doing. I can still take this little injury." "Take it?" Yu Qianqiu gritted his teeth when he heard this. He thought, "Old man, what are you doing? You've already been beaten to this extent, yet you still want to save face and suffer. Do you really think that the Eastern Holy Land's immortals are as easy to bully as the cultivators?" But Yu Qianqiu also knew this old man's temper. He couldn't force him, so he turned and asked, "Old monster, do you have any more healing elixirs?" Immortal Crocodile wasn't stingy. He raised his hand, and a porcelain bottle flashed into his hand. He handed it over and said, "This is the yin-yang rejuvenation pill. It has good healing effects. For human cultivators, as long as they're still breathing, they can recover from their injuries. One pill is enough." "Thank you, old monster." Yu Qianchou took the bottle and was about to open the cork when Bai Chongqun raised his hand and pressed it down. Bai Chongqun shook his head and said, "There's no need. This time, I was at a disadvantage because my body couldn't bear my cultivation. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been injured. Although I'm injured, it's not a bad thing for me. I've already faintly comprehended a trace of the great Tao of reforging the body. There's no need to rush to heal. Leave the wound for me to study. Reforging the body." Even immortal crocodile couldn't help but exclaim. He looked at Bai Chongqun as if he was looking at a monster. Perhaps Bai Chongqun and Yu Qianchou didn't know what this meant, but immortal crocodile was shocked. The word rebirth popped up in his mind. Yu Qianchou looked at the wound on Bai Chongqun's abdomen and didn't know what to say. However, he also knew that no matter what he said, it would be useless. Since Bai Chongqun didn't even use the elixir, he should just continue to comprehend it. He didn't return the porcelain bottle to immortal crocodile. Instead, he put it away and asked curiously, "Master, who exactly did you fight with? How could someone injure you like this?" Bai Chongqun didn't hide anything and simply said, "I heard that the great feudal lords from all over the world have late-stage great immortal cultivation, so I directly went to challenge the nearest one. Who knew that there would be a group of guests from the immortal city in that great feudal lord's mansion? After fighting, I was besieged. I killed some of them and injured others. I was also injured by 3 late-stage great immortal cultivators, but in the end, I managed to kill them. Because I wanted to find a place to heal, but I wasn't familiar with other places, so I instinctively wanted to return to the place where I first came. In the end, due to my heavy injuries, I landed here. That's roughly what happened." His words were really very simple, but Yu Qianchou's heart palpitated when he heard it, and he cursed in his heart, the old man was too crazy. He heard that the great feudal lord had late-stage great immortal cultivation, and he went to challenge him. "How high is your cultivation? Can't you tell me a little?" He actually skipped the feudal lord and went to challenge the great feudal lord. He was really crazy. What did he mean by a group of guests from the immortal city? How many people were there in this group? The so-called siege, how many people were besieged by? The so-called killing and injuring some, how many people were there? How high was their cultivation? The old man did not speak of any of them. He only mentioned them briefly. But Yu Qianchou could imagine how intense the fight must have been. At least, it must have been an intensity that he had never seen before. It was just that the old man didn't want to talk about it. The only thing that he could describe was the combined strength of the 3 late-stage great immortals. It was obvious that the 3 of them were not ordinary powerful, but they were still killed by him. Based on Yu Qianchou's understanding of Bai Chongqun's character, he was very sure that the battle was more intense than he had imagined. Bai Chongqun had not been forced into a corner. Otherwise, with his arrogant character, how could he instinctively avoid healing his injuries? Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Bai Chongqun solemnly. He didn't know whether this person was telling the truth or not. If he could kill 3 late-stage great immortals who had joined forces to attack him, then his cultivation had already reached the early-stage immortal emperor? As far as Immortal Lord Crocodile knew, among the people from the immortal and netherworld realms who came to fight the Thousand Swords Demon Lord, there was no one with the cultivation of a minor immortal. The others with the lowest cultivation were at the early stage exalted immortal. Most of them were great immortals and above. And he couldn't see through his cultivation now, so this person's cultivation had at least reached the great immortal realm. But what puzzled Immortal Lord Crocodile was how the human body could withstand such a high cultivation. How exactly did he do it? Yu Qianchou didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He asked, "Master, may I ask, What realm has your cultivation reached? Bai Changchun paused and thought for a while. I have already integrated the heavenly spirit into my life soul. What do you mean? Yu Qianzhou was stunned. When he didn't get a reply from Bai Changchun, he turned back to Immortal Lord Crocodile and said, Old monster, what is the cultivation of integrating the heavenly spirit into your life soul? Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes flickered. Integrating the heavenly spirit into your life soul represents the early stage great immortal cultivation. He stared at Bai Changchun and said, Your cultivation is not bad, but I find it hard to believe that you could kill 3 late-stage great immortals with your early-stage great immortal cultivation, not to mention that there were others surrounding you. The meaning behind his words was obvious. He clearly did not believe what Bai Changchun had said. But Yu Qianzhou believed him without hesitation because he knew Bai Changchun's character. This was a person who was so proud that he wouldn't lie. He said in shock, Master, so your cultivation has already reached the early stage great immortal. No wonder you could kill that underworld messenger so easily. Bai Changchun ignored him and looked up at Immortal Lord Crocodile. He said coldly, Whether you believe it or not, what does it have to do with me? The atmosphere in the tent suddenly became tense. Chapter 736. Although there was no hostility in Immortal Crocodile's words, his tone was so rude and disdainful that it made Immortal Crocodile's eyes glow fiercely. He stared at Bai Changchun with a murderous look. On the other hand, Bai Changchun was still calm and collected, not taking Immortal Crocodile seriously at all. We're all on the same side, don't hurt our friendship. Yu Qianzhou smiled apologetically as he tried to persuade Immortal Crocodile. Although Immortal Crocodile's cultivation had dropped, he still had his pride and skills. How could he stand someone looking down on him like that? But when he glanced at the wound on Bai Changchun's chest and abdomen, his murderous intent began to recede. He slowly said in a low voice, Your injury has not healed yet. When it is healed, I will come and ask for advice from you. With that, he turned and walked out of the tent. Only the master and disciple were left in the tent. Yu Qianzhou shook his head and sat next to Bai Changchun with a bitter smile. He scratched his head and said, Master, I have something to say, but I don't know if I should say it. Bai Changchun's deep gaze stared straight into his eyes, causing Yu Qianzhou to not dare to look directly at him. However, Yu Qianzhou gritted his teeth and braced himself to say, Master, although your cultivation level is high, as a person in this world, how can you rather break than bend? Even if it is for your own good, there is a time. Sigh. Master, this is really not very good. As a disciple, he could not say too much and could only stop. Yu Qianzhou thought that Bai Changchun would be unhappy to hear this. Unexpectedly, Bai Changchun looked at him and smiled. He nodded and said, Yu Qianzhou, what are you pursuing in this life? Yu Qianzhou looked at the smile on Bai Changchun's face and was stunned. It was rare to see his master smile. After hearing this, he thought for a while and said, I am actually a lazy person. In fact, I really want to live a carefree life like Senior Nongzhu. However, your disciple's mortal heart is too heavy, and there are many things that are difficult to let go of. Furthermore, there is always a sense of crisis, so I have no choice but to work hard. If you must say that I have a goal. I hope that one day, I will have the ability to let myself and the people around me live a truly free and unfettered life. If my ability is a little stronger, I hope that I can let everyone in the world live a little better. Bai Changchun smiled faintly and said, Are you tired of living? Yu Qianzhou smiled bitterly and nodded, I'm a little tired in my heart, but the path is chosen by myself. After walking so far, I don't want to turn back. I want to continue walking, hoping that my wish will come true one day. Continue to work hard. The smile on Bai Changchun's face became warmer and warmer. He sighed slightly and said, You are an amazing person. You have a strong heart, a sense of responsibility, and a sense of responsibility. In fact, your heart is much stronger than mine, so you are destined to be very tired, but this is also why I like you." These words caused Yu Qianzhou to feel a bit embarrassed. He rubbed his nose with an embarrassed smile and said, "Master is too kind. How can this disciple compare to you? Your indomitable spirit and invincible cultivation have always made this disciple very envious. This disciple can't even beg for it. I know my own situation very well. To put it bluntly, this disciple is just a selfish vile person. How can I compare to Master?" Bai Changchun gently waved his hand and said, "You are wrong. Who in the world is not selfish? People's hearts are made of flesh, not stones that can pave the way. They can sacrifice themselves for passers-by and have no regrets. A person with a really strong heart, no matter how selfish he is, can distinguish right from wrong, good from evil, and will unconsciously dare to take responsibility. I am not as good as you. Since I embarked on the road of cultivation, I have only done it for myself. It is also unintentional to take charge of the demon domain and bear that responsibility. Now, I have even abandoned the responsibility I should bear for myself. This is what I call being truly selfish." Yu Qianzhou was speechless. Why are these two master and disciple fighting to put the label of selfishness on me? Their awareness is too high. Selfishness is selfishness. How can there be a difference between true and false? You are just feeling a little guilty because you have avoided responsibility. But it is not good to argue with him, so he simply kept his mouth shut. There was a short silence in the tent. "Yu Qianzhou, do you know what Master is pursuing in this life?" Bai Changchun suddenly asked. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He shook his head curiously and said, "I don't know." Bai Changchun's eyes suddenly became deep and bright. The strong battle intent emitted from it was like a bright lamp, illuminating the entire tent. He said in a sonorous voice, "A higher cultivation, a stronger opponent, until I die." In a roundabout way, this was equivalent to answering Yu Qianzhou's previous unbending words. Yu Qianzhou was speechless. He knew that it was useless to persuade him. Bai Changchun tilted his head to look at him and said, "I believe you have seen what I buried on the beach, so don't look for me in the future." Unreasonable. It was unreasonable. Yu Qianzhou secretly shook his head. He reached out and took out the storage bag that Bai Changchun buried on the beach. Then, he stuffed many small silver balls into the storage bag and offered it with both hands. "Master, disciple understands your determination. Don't worry, disciple promises not to look for you in the future. But it is better for you to keep this with you. When you are at an important place, you can casually throw one out. For the sake of our relationship as master and disciple, take it as helping disciple. Perhaps disciple will need it when I encounter some big trouble in the future." Bai Changchun stared at the storage bag in his hand. After pondering for a while, he finally reached out and took it, which was considered a promise. Yu Qianzhou sighed softly. He stood up and bowed. "Disciple will take his leave. I will not disturb Master's recovery." After that, he retreated out of the tent. There was a blue sky and white clouds outside. There was a reflection in the moon lake below. He could smell the fragrance of grass when he breathed. Yu Qianzhou took a deep breath, and his eyes became firm again. Garland, who was guarding outside, also came over and wrapped around him like a water snake. Her ample bosom kept rubbing against his body, as if she was teasing his sexual desire. Yu Qianzhou looked at her with clear eyes and smiled. "Chief Garland, please tell the people in the tribe not to tell anyone about the immortal in the tent." Garland immediately agreed and reluctantly left him. It seemed that she was not able to have sex with such a brave warrior, and she felt very uncomfortable in her heart. By the lake, immortal Lord Crocodile, dressed in a silver-white robe, stood quietly with his hands behind his back. His silver hair fluttered in the wind, and no one knew what he was thinking. Yu Qianzhou stepped on the grass and strolled over to stand beside him. He smiled faintly. Don't take it to heart. My master is just like that. He's used to breaking rather than bending. He doesn't mean to look down on you." Before he finished speaking, both of them looked back at the same time. They saw that Bai Changchun had already walked out of the tent. He glanced at the two of them indifferently, then turned into a shadow and flew toward a mountain peak in the distance. They could vaguely see him landing on the mountain peak. Yu Qianzhou muttered in his heart. "I don't know what he's going to do again. He's injured, but he doesn't know how to behave. Why is he running around blindly?" Suddenly, Immortal Lord Crocodile's voice sounded in his ear. "Your master gives off a feeling of being one with heaven and earth. This realm is very strong. It's not his cultivation level. I can see that he has a body full of skills, but it's bound by his physical body. Once he is reborn and has an immortal body of eternal life, he will be even stronger. If he can't get rid of the shackles of his physical body, no matter how strong he is, he will be limited by his lifespan. It's a pity that the immortal ascension platform is sealed by the soul transformation smoke. Otherwise, he could use the passage to refine his immortal body. By then, the celestial world will have another top expert. What a pity." Yu Qianzhou nodded and smiled. "My master is known as the world's #1 expert, so he is naturally very strong. I believe that even if my master doesn't use the passage to refine his immortal body, he will be reborn and cast an immortal body." "Oh. There's such a thing?" Immortal Lord Crocodile tilted his head. "Why are you so sure?" Yu Qianzhou's eyes were firm as he said word by word, "Because he has always been invincible and can defeat any strong opponent. Even if his physical body can restrain him for a while, it can't restrain him forever. He will break through this shackle sooner or later. I believe that this is his fate. Even if he dies one day, he will only die at the hands of the strongest opponent, not because of the limitations of his physical body." Immortal Lord Crocodile snorted. "Master and disciple indeed. Looks like you have a lot of confidence in your master." "Not a lot of confidence, but he can definitely do it." Yu Qianzhou suddenly turned around and stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile. "Because his name is Bai Changchun. The human world has bound him for too long. Now that the shackles have been broken, he will move forward with indomitable will, becoming stronger and stronger until he dies in battle. One day, you will know the meaning of the name Bai Changchun." Bang! An angry clap of thunder sounded, as if in response to Yu Qianzhou's words. The two of them suddenly looked up and saw the white clouds in the sky suddenly churning and forming dark clouds. The airflow between heaven and earth suddenly became chaotic, and in an instant, it turned into a raging gale. The calm moon lake suddenly became undulating. The cannibals by the lake looked around in fear. They had seen the weather change before, but they had never seen such a sudden change. The tents that had been set up with stakes seemed to be pulled up by the roots. The cannibals immediately got busy, pulling up the stakes and putting away the tents. The wind blew fiercely, and the sky and earth changed color. Dark clouds kept churning and gathering from all directions. In an instant, there was a loud clap of thunder that covered the sky and earth. Only the sound of thunder could be heard, and it was a frightening sight. "Old monster, what's going on?" The voice was like a mosquito buzzing under the thunder. Yu Qianzhou looked up at the sky. Why did it feel like the opening of the East Holy Land? "It's where your master is. I don't know what he's doing." Thunder flashed, and Immortal Lord Crocodile pointed at the mountain where Bai Changchun had landed. Hearing this, Yu Qianzhou looked carefully and saw that the dark clouds were gathering in that direction. Immortal Lord Crocodile shouted, "Let's go and see what your master is doing." Then, he pulled Yu Qianzhou and flew away. The sky was dark, and none of the cannibals running around the lake noticed that the two of them had disappeared. Chapter 737. The two of them flew to the front of the mountain and looked at each other, not knowing what he was doing. Bai Changchun stood quietly at the top of the mountain with his hands behind his back and his eyes closed. Golden light constantly flowed out of his body and wandered between heaven and earth, drawing ethereal and untraceable arcs. Every flowing streak of brilliant golden light seemed ordinary, but it gave off a deep and unforgettable feeling of shock, bringing along an unknown and terrifying aura between heaven and earth. It was as if the dark clouds and storms in the sky were attracted by these flowing golden light. As the golden flowing light increased in number, the simple sketches caused the entire mountain peak to become slightly illusory and blurry. It was as if every single movement of the golden flowing light contained the laws and truths of the world. It gave people the illusion that they were reenacting the formation of this world at the beginning of time, a dreamy and magical process. The sky darkened, and the golden light shrouding the top of the mountain became more and more numerous, making Bai Changchun look like a golden Dharma idol. Suddenly, Bai Changchun opened his eyes slowly and stared at the two of them. He said calmly, "Stay away." Then he closed his eyes again. The two of them were slightly shocked. They felt a strong ancient aura coming from Bai Changchun's eyes, as if he had been standing on this mountain since ancient times. Yu Qianzhou was still in shock, but Immortal Lord Crocodile's expression became serious. He pulled Yu Qianzhou and quickly flashed hundreds of meters away. Yu Qianzhou tilted his head and asked, "What are those golden lights outside my master's body?" The rumbling thunder was so loud that he couldn't even hear his own voice clearly. Thus, he transmitted his voice again and asked again. Immortal Lord Crocodile said solemnly, "The quintessential essence in your body is white. When your cultivation reaches the immortal level, the quintessential essence in your body will turn into immortal qi and become golden. Your master is releasing the immortal qi in his body, as if he is communicating with the unknown power of heaven and earth. I didn't expect immortal qi to have such an effect. It's really unheard of and unseen. Amazing. Then what is my master doing? I don't know either. Let's wait and see." At this moment, the flowing golden light suddenly sped up. A series of dazzling thunderbolts shot out from the dark clouds like a series of cannons, meandering and sinisterly striking Bai Changchun's body. After the dazzling white light, it was closely followed by the continuous boom-boom sounds of explosions. Bai Changchun's entire body had been wrapped in lightning, turning into a ball of white light, like a giant incandescent light bulb, illuminating the entire world. "Master!" Yu Qianzhou exclaimed, but the lightning bolts were too loud, and his voice could be ignored. Immortal Crocodile restrained Yu Qianzhou, who was a little impulsive. He stared at the rapidly swimming golden light, then at the sinister lightning that filled the sky. He transmitted his voice and said, "Don't be agitated. Your master is fine. I think I can guess what your master is doing. I think I know what your master is doing." Yu Qianzhou felt that his eyes had been blinded by the intense white light. He narrowed his eyes and asked, "What is my master doing?" "Your master is truly a genius of his generation. Having such a master is enough to make you proud for the rest of your life." Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at the light ball at the mountain peak with a solemn expression. He paused and said, "If I'm not wrong, he is using the power of the heavenly lightning to temper his body." If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed it. He could summon thunderclouds to borrow the power of the heavenly lightning in broad daylight. Without using any treasures, he can communicate with heaven and earth and borrow the power of heaven and earth. Amazing! Yu Qianzhou asked excitedly and nervously, "Old monster, are you saying that my master is reforging his body? Can he succeed?" Immortal Lord Crocodile looked back indifferently and said, "Didn't you tell me before that he would definitely succeed? Why? Are you not confident now?" Yu Qianzhou smiled awkwardly and shut up. He could only blame the commotion in front of him. It would be a lie to say that he was not worried. He did not know what was going on inside the light ball that was surrounded by thunderbolts, but the golden light outside was still swimming around. It was obvious that it was still being controlled. With that in mind, Yu Qianqiu was slightly relieved. After the thunderclap resounded for nearly 2 hours, Immortal Lord Crocodile's expression became more and more shocked. He wondered if he could withstand such a powerful thunderbolt for 2 hours with just his body alone if his cultivation was still at its peak. Just as he was asking himself, the golden light mixed with the thunderbolts suddenly sped up. The atmosphere between heaven and earth became extremely heavy, so oppressive that it was difficult to breathe. It made people feel as if the air had stopped flowing. With the mountain peak as the center, it was as if even time had stopped flowing. Suddenly, the pressure between heaven and earth relaxed, and the thunderbolts under the dark clouds quickly disappeared. The rumbling sky returned to normal in the blink of an eye, with only the wind blowing. The feeling of the tremors suddenly disappearing and only the sound of the wind made people feel relieved. It was as if they had drunk honey, and every pore in their body was breathing to their heart's content. The sky began to turn white, and the dark clouds in the sky quickly dissipated. No one knew where they came from, and where they would return to. Perhaps the person standing on the mountain peak would know the answer. After all, he was the one who had summoned them. The light ball on the mountain peak gradually shrank, slowly disappearing or converging into that person's body. Bai Changchun stood there unscathed, unhurriedly twisting the cloth buttons on his green robe. His clothes were obviously brand new. Yu Qianqiu was dumbfounded. The old man was actually changing his clothes in the lightning? As Bai Changchun meticulously tidied up his clothes, the golden light solidified on the mountain peak also drew an arc and entered his body. After tidying up his clothes, he slowly put his hands behind his back, and a majestic aura was suddenly released from his body. It was like a stormy sea that rolled in all directions, and it pressed down on the surrounding trees at the foot of the mountain, causing them to collapse one after another. Yu Qianqiu was forced to breathe by the aura that rushed over. His eyes rolled back, and he felt the strong pressure pouring into his lungs, about to burst them. Fortunately, Immortal Lord Crocodile released a golden transparent shield of vigor in time, containing him within it. Only then did he have the leisure to look around while panting. The trees at the foot of the mountain fell like dominoes. The aura released by Bai Changchun soared into the sky, and the dark clouds in the sky that had not yet dissipated were immediately dispersed, and they quickly spread up and down. When Bai Changchun retracted his aura, the vegetation within a kilometer radius had fallen into a huge circle, as neat as the crop circles in his previous life. Bai Changchun, who was standing with his hands behind his back, finally calmed down. He looked into the distance quietly, his green robe fluttering in the wind, and his expression calm. Immortal Lord Crocodile retracted the golden transparent shield of vigor and flew to the mountain peak with Yu Qianqiu. Bai Changchun slowly turned to look at the two, his expression calm. Yu Qianqiu looked at him up and down for a while, and did not find anything different from before. He asked suspiciously, "Master, have you succeeded in body forging?" Bai Changchun nodded slightly, expressionless. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes flickered, and he said in a low voice, "If I'm not wrong, your cultivation has broken through again." Bai Changchun nodded again, and said lightly, "Early stage Great Immortal was the limit that my body could withstand before, and I have been suppressing my cultivation for many years. This time, with the help of the power of heaven and earth, I directly broke through to the late stage Great Immortal. This is also a matter of course, there is nothing strange about it." Yu Qianqiu's mouth opened, revealing an exaggerated expression of surprise, and then he cupped his hands and said with a smile, "Congratulations, Master." But in his heart, he was complaining. Such a powerful cultivation, but he did not take care of his disciple, it was really inhumane. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head in amazement, and said, "I have lived for hundreds of thousands of years, but this is the first time I have seen someone who can withstand such a powerful cultivation with a human body. In the celestial realm, it is more difficult to cultivate one level, but you actually broke through 2 levels in one go, it is really admirable." Immortal Lord Crocodile is a knowledgeable person in the celestial realm. "I have something to ask," Bai Changchun said lightly. Although his tone and expression were a little indifferent, Immortal Lord Crocodile was not angry, because the person in front of him was indeed worthy of his admiration, and he had the right to be arrogant. So he nodded and said, "Brother Bai, please ask, I will tell you everything I know." Bai Changchun asked indifferently, "I've already succeeded in forging my body. I wonder if I can smoothly pass through the Netherworld Flame Sea and the Netherworld Passage with my current body?" Yu Qianzhou was stunned. In a flash, he already knew what Bai Changchun was trying to do. He was so shocked that he was speechless. Immortal Monarch Crocodile smiled faintly and said, "Of course. The Netherworld Fire Sea can only stop those with mortal flesh and blood, but it cannot stop those who have cultivated the immortal body, demonic body, and nether body. Brother Bai can go whenever you want, but you have to leave the heaven and earth cosmos formation first." "Oh. It's a slip of the tongue. Since your disciple can enter and exit this place at will, it shouldn't be a problem for Brother Bai." Bai Changchun glanced at Yu Qianzhou, then he shook his head lightly and said, "When I was communicating with the heavens and the earth earlier, I've already faintly glimpsed the profundity of the worldly formation of heaven and earth. The worldly formation of heaven and earth can no longer stop me from entering and leaving." Yu Qianzhou looked at Bai Changchun again, dumbfounded. He really admired Bai Changchun from the bottom of his heart. This old fellow's ability was indeed unfathomable. Even the worldly formation of heaven and earth couldn't stop him now. He was really a little too strong. He let out a long sigh in his heart. A trapped dragon rising to the heavens, about to soar to the 9 heavens. Bai Changchun's words were actually meant for Yu Qianzhou to hear, but Immortal Monarch Crocodile was a little confused and couldn't wrap his head around it. He paused and said, "From what Brother Bai said, are you going to leave the Eastern Holy Land and head to the Netherworld now?" Bai Changchun shook his head slightly and said indifferently, "Not for now. I heard that the Eastern Holy Land is ruled by 2 immortal monarchs on land and 2 Netherworld generals on land. Since I'm here, there's no reason I won't know." Chapter 738. After a moment of silence, Immortal Lord Crocodile said slowly, "Brother Bai's methods are unquestionable, but I still have to advise you not to trespass into the Netherworld. You must know that not everyone can ascend to the immortal world, but the majority of them end up in the underworld. In the boundless and endless darkness, perhaps there are some unknown existences that are even more terrifying than the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor." Even Bai Changchun was a little moved after hearing this. He pondered and said, "Immortal Monarch means to say that there is someone in the underworld with a higher cultivation than the Underworld King and Immortal Emperor?" Yu Qianzhou's eyes sparkled as he listened carefully. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure. No one knows where the end of the Netherworld is. On the surface, the Immortal Realm and the Netherworld are equally famous, but that's all on the surface. Those unknown beings that have been silent for countless years are the most terrifying existences in the 3 realms. Those endless places have always been covered by a mysterious veil of darkness. I once heard Immortal Emperor Jin Tai say that although the Netherworld is the territory of the Emperor of the Underworld, even Bai Qi himself did not dare to uncover the mysteries of those endless places. That's why Immortal Emperor Jin Tai has never set foot in the Netherworld for fear of attracting unnecessary trouble." Bai Changchun's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was a strong fighting spirit in them. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but interrupt curiously. "More powerful than the Immortal Emperor and the Emperor of the Underworld? Isn't that a god? Is there a god in that place?" "I don't know. I only heard Immortal Emperor Jin Tai mention it casually. He seemed to be afraid of it, so he didn't elaborate." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and looked at Bai Changchun. "Brother Bai, if you must go to the Netherworld, it's best not to set foot in that endless place. Consider this my advice." Yu Qianzhou secretly cursed. The more advice you give, the more excited the old man will be. He turned to look at Bai Changchun and saw that Bai Changchun and Immortal Lord Crocodile were looking into the distance. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but look as well. More than a dozen streams of light flew over and turned into a dozen people with different appearances. They stood in the air and stared at the three people on the mountain peak. One of them pointed at Bai Changchun and said to a golden-robed man with a sinister face, "It's him." Before he could finish speaking, his eyes were fixed on Immortal Lord Crocodile. His mouth was agape as if he had seen something unbelievable. Everyone else reacted the same way, their eyes filled with shock. The golden-robed leader's face stiffened. He looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile in shock. You are Immortal Lord Crocodile?" Immortal Crocodile stared at him and sneered. "Jin Miao, long time no see. What business do you have here? Could it be that you know that I have reappeared and are here to visit me? How is that possible?" The golden-robed man was shocked. Weren't you killed by the myriad swords demon monarch? How are you still alive? Do you wish for me to die?" Immortal Lord Crocodile narrowed his eyes. The aura of an immortal monarch that looked down on the entire world had appeared again. "I wouldn't dare." The golden-robed man was suddenly startled. He looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile suspiciously. "Immortal Lord, your cultivation level." The dozen or so people looked at each other. At their level of cultivation, they could easily distinguish anyone's unique aura. It was difficult for others to disguise themselves. They were certain of Immortal Lord Crocodile's identity, but their cultivation level was unbelievable. Immortal Lord Crocodile, one of the 12 great immortal lords of the celestial world, should have been a mid-stage celestial emperor. However, even they could see through Immortal Lord Crocodile's cultivation level. It was unbelievable. "It's all thanks to the myriad swords demon monarch," Immortal Lord Crocodile said through gritted teeth. His words immediately gave everyone an idea of what was going on. They looked at each other with strange expressions on their faces. The golden-robed man gave a look to his left and right, and the dozen or so people floated into the air and bowed. "Greetings, Immortal Lord Crocodile. Rise." Immortal Lord Crocodile showed the majestic aura of the past. He raised his hand and gestured for them to rise. Then he asked, "Jin Miao, what are you doing here? Recently, someone broke into the Great Lord's mansion and slaughtered our celestial world cultivators. I am here to capture this person on the orders of the immortal lords of the eastern and western palaces." After Jin Miao finished speaking, he glanced at Bai Changchun and looked at the person beside him with a hint of doubt. "Didn't you say that person was an early-stage great immortal?" The reason why he said this was because he could tell that Bai Changchun was in the advanced grand immortal stage with his early immortal emperor stage cultivation. This was completely different from the early grand immortal stage cultivation that he had received earlier. He was starting to suspect that he had recognized the wrong person. The person beside him also felt strange. At the scene of the incident, he could see that Bai Changchun's cultivation level was the same as his. Why couldn't he see through it now? He explained doubtfully, "I am sure that this person is the one who caused trouble. As for his cultivation level, perhaps he has some way to hide it. Otherwise, he would not have been able to kill the Great Lord and the others." Yu Qianqiu looked at Bai Changchun nervously, but Bai Changchun just stood there with his hands behind his back and his eyes slightly closed. Jin Miao was sizing Bai Changchun up when Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly asked, "Jin Miao, what are you talking about? Who are the two palace immortal lords?" He was more concerned about this. He also wanted to know which immortal lords were still alive. Jin Miao was startled. Then he smiled and cupped his hands. "Immortal Lord, East Palace Immortal Lord Yi Shao and West Palace Immortal Lord Ji Wu." Yi Shao and Ji Wu. I didn't expect them to be alive. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. "Jin Miao, go back and report that I will go find them in a few days. I will definitely pass on your message." "But..." Jin Miao stared at Bai Changchun and sneered. "Please wait for a moment. Allow me to capture this person first." Otherwise, I will not be able to report back empty-handed. Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand. You don't have to worry about this. When I see Yi Xiao and Ji Wu, I will explain to them. You go back first. Jean Miao's eyes flashed. Immortal Lord Crocodile, this is not appropriate. Immortal Lord Crocodile's eyes flashed as he glared at Jean Miao and shouted, Jean Miao, how dare you speak to me like this? His aura surged, and he was indeed angry. That surging aura almost suffocated Yu Qianzhou. Suddenly, a righteous aura appeared in front of him, counteracting the pressure he had to bear. Bai Changchun had lent him a helping hand. Jean Miao raised his eyebrows. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and narrowed his eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile, do you really think that with your current cultivation, you are qualified to be one of the 12 immortal lords? One must know one's own limits. Don't be shameless. I am polite to you because the immortal emperor conferred you the title of immortal lord. Do you really think that you are a nobody now? You want to see 2 immortal lords? Believe it or not, even if I kill you now, no one will say a word. I will definitely take you away. You'd better know what's good for you. Don't make things difficult for yourself. The dozen people around him burst into laughter. They were laughing at Immortal Lord Crocodile for overestimating himself. How dare you? Immortal Lord Crocodile roared. His weakness was poked, and he immediately flew into a rage. He spread his arms, and a majestic aura spread out. He was about to attack. However, someone beside him said lightly, Immortal Lord, step back for now. Bai Changchun stepped forward and stared at Jean Miao and the others. I hope you have the ability to take me away. Don't let me down. Everyone instantly felt an indescribable aura suddenly erupt from that thin body. The entire mountain peak gave off a majestic feeling, as if it had merged with the heavens and the earth. Suddenly, the green-robed body seemed so tall and big. Under that thin face, his lips moved slightly, and a sonorous Sanskrit chant resounded through the sky. There is righteousness in heaven and earth. A majestic pressure suddenly descended from the sky and gushed out from the ground, surging between heaven and earth. It could not be seen or touched, but it felt so clear and shocking. These immortals with high cultivation looked around in horror. The willfulness that they usually had when they soared between heaven and earth disappeared. At this time, in the face of the power of heaven and earth, they suddenly felt so small. Jean Miao's pupils shrank. She looked at Bai Changchun in disbelief and shouted, Kill him. Righteousness, condense. As soon as she finished speaking, the majestic aura in the surroundings instantly condensed and pressed down like thousands of towering mountains. The huge pressure made the eyes of the dozen people who were extracting immortal treasures bulge. Among them, 2 of the weaker ones exploded into 2 clouds of blood mist on the spot. They finally understood that once the power of heaven and earth was unleashed, it was not something that could be resisted by humans. The rest of the people who were extracting immortal treasures had become slow motion. They were suffering from the huge pressure of resisting the power of heaven and earth. Bai Changchun stared at them indifferently, expressionless. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Yu Qianzhou stood beside Bai Changchun. Although they could feel the terrifying power of heaven and earth, they did not feel any pressure. But from the actions of the people floating in the air opposite them, they could see that this inexplicable power was indescribably strong, because 2 immortals could not resist it and died on the spot. Yu Qianzhou's mouth turned into a circle, and his eyes shone brightly. He did not know how to vent his feelings of admiration. In short, this old fellow was still as admirable as ever. Selling cakes. Immortal Lord Crocodile's lips were tightly shut, and the muscles on his cheeks were constantly rubbing as he stared at the thin figure in front of him in a green robe. At this moment, Bai Changchun stretched out his right hand from behind his back. He raised his palm and slowly lifted it up. Under the heavy pressure, a steady stream of air squeezed in from all directions and gathered in his palm. A dazzling light burst out, and the ball of light grew bigger and more dazzling. Suddenly, the withered palm moved, shuttling through the ball of light, changing into an unfathomable trajectory. Finger shadows intertwined, and countless sharp white lights burst out from the fingertips. In the blink of an eye, thousands of streams of light flew like a storm toward the dozen people floating in the air opposite them. The scene of cornucopia green eyebrows being struck down flashed in Yu Qianzhou's mind. He said in a daze, "Immortal lost finger." Chapter 739. After a moment of silence, Immortal Lord Crocodile said slowly, "Brother Bai's methods are unquestionable, but I still have to advise you not to trespass into the netherworld. You must know that not everyone can ascend to the immortal realm, but most of them end up in the netherworld. In the endless darkness, there may be some unknown beings more terrifying than the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor." Even Bai Changchun was moved by this. "Immortal Lord, do you mean that there are people in the netherworld with higher cultivation than the Emperor of the Underworld and the Immortal Emperor?" Yu Qianzhou's eyes lit up as he listened. Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head slightly. "I'm not sure. No one knows where the end of the netherworld is. On the surface, the immortal realm and the netherworld are equally famous, but that's all on the surface. Those unknown beings that have been silent for countless years are the most terrifying existences in the three realms. Those endless places have always been covered by a mysterious veil of darkness. I once heard Immortal Emperor Jin Tai say that although the netherworld is the territory of the Emperor of the Underworld, even Bai Qi himself did not dare to uncover the mysteries of those endless places. That's why Immortal Emperor Jin Tai has never set foot in the netherworld for fear of attracting unnecessary trouble." Bai Changchun's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was a strong fighting spirit in them. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but interrupt curiously. "More powerful than the Immortal Emperor and the Emperor of the Underworld? Isn't that a god? Is there a god in that place?" "I don't know. I only heard Immortal Emperor Jin Tai mention it casually. He seemed to be afraid of it, so he didn't elaborate." Immortal Lord Crocodile shook his head and looked at Bai Changchun. "Brother Bai, if you must go to the netherworld, it's best not to set foot in that endless place. Consider this my advice." Yu Qianzhou secretly cursed. The more advice you give, the more excited the old man will be. He turned to look at Bai Changchun and saw that Bai Changchun and Immortal Lord Crocodile were looking into the distance. Yu Qianzhou couldn't help but look as well. More than a dozen streams of light flew over and turned into a dozen people with different appearances. They stood in the air and stared unkindly at the three people on the mountain peak. One of them pointed at Bai Changchun and said to the leading golden-robed man, "That's him." Before he could finish, he stared at Immortal Lord Crocodile with his mouth agape as if he had seen something unbelievable. Everyone else was the same, their eyes filled with shock. The golden-robed leader's face stiffened. He looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile in shock. You are Immortal Lord Crocodile?" Immortal Crocodile stared at him and sneered. "Jin Miao, long time no see. What business do you have here? Could it be that you know that I have reappeared and are here to visit me? How is that possible?" The golden-robed man was shocked. Weren't you killed by the myriad swords demon monarch?" The Lord Jin King Lord said. "Do you wish for me to die?" Immortal Lord Crocodile narrowed his eyes. The aura of an immortal monarch that looked down on the entire world had appeared again. "I wouldn't dare." "Huh?" The golden-robed man suddenly paused and looked at Immortal Lord Crocodile suspiciously. "Immortal Lord, your cultivation?" The dozen people looked at each other. At their level of cultivation, they could easily identify anyone's unique aura. It was hard to hide from them. They could confirm Immortal Lord Crocodile's identity, but his cultivation was unbelievable. Immortal Lord Crocodile, one of the 12 great immortal lords, should have been a mid-stage immortal emperor. However, they could see through his cultivation. It was only a late-stage exalted immortal. It was unbelievable. It's all thanks to the Lord Crocodile. Immortal Lord Crocodile said through gritted teeth. His words immediately gave everyone an idea of what was going on. They looked at each other with strange expressions on their faces. The golden-robed man looked to his left and right, and the dozen people flew into the air and bowed. Greetings, Immortal Lord Crocodile. Rise. Immortal Lord Crocodile showed his majestic aura and raised his hand, indicating for them to rise. Then he asked, Jin Miao, what are you doing here? Recently, someone broke into the Great Lord's mansion and killed our cultivators. I'm here to capture this person on the orders of the immortal lords of the eastern and western palaces. After Jin Miao finished speaking, she glanced at Bai Changchun with a hint of doubt. She looked at the person beside her and asked, didn't you say that person was an early great immortal? He said this because he could tell from his early-stage immortal emperor cultivation that Bai Changchun was a late-stage great immortal, which did not match the early-stage great immortal that he had received earlier. He wondered if he had recognized the wrong person. The person beside him also felt strange. At the scene of the incident, he could tell that Bai Changchun's cultivation was the same as his. Why couldn't he see through it now? He explained suspiciously, I'm sure this person is the one who caused trouble. As for his cultivation, maybe he has some way to hide it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to kill the Great Lord and the others. Yu Qianzhou looked at Bai Changchun nervously, but Bai Changchun just stood there with his hands behind his back, his eyes slightly closed, unperturbed. Jin Miao was sizing Bai Changchun up when Immortal Lord Crocodile suddenly asked, Jin Miao, what are you talking about? Who are the two palace immortal lords? He was more concerned about this. He also wanted to know which immortal lords were still alive. Jin Miao was startled, then smiled and cupped his hands. East Palace Immortal Lord Yi Shao and West Palace Immortal Lord Ji Wu. Yi Shao and Ji Wu. I didn't expect them to be alive. Immortal Lord Crocodile sighed. Jin Miao, go back and report that I'll go find them in a few days. I'll definitely help you pass the message. But... Jin Miao stared at Bai Changchun and sneered. Immortal Lord, please wait for a moment. Let me capture this person first. Otherwise, I won't be able to report back empty-handed. Immortal Lord Crocodile waved his hand. You don't have to worry about this. When I see Yi Shao and Ji Wu, I'll explain to them. You can go back first. Jin Miao's eyes flashed. Immortal Lord Crocodile, that's not appropriate. Immortal Lord Crocodile glared at Jin Miao and shouted, Jin Miao, how dare you talk to me like this? His aura surged. He was indeed angry. That surging aura almost suffocated Yu Qianzhou. Suddenly, a righteous aura appeared in front of him, counteracting the pressure he had to bear. Bai Changchun had lent him a helping hand. Jin Miao raised his eyebrows. He crossed his arms in front of his chest and narrowed his eyes. Immortal Lord Crocodile, do you really think you're qualified to be one of the 12 great immortal lords with your current cultivation? One must know one's own limits. Don't be shameless. I'm being polite to you because the Immortal Emperor conferred you the title of Immortal Lord. Do you really think you're something now? You want to see 2 immortal lords? Believe it or not, even if I kill you right now, no one will say a word about it. I'm definitely going to take you away. You'd better know what's good for you. Don't make things difficult for yourself. The dozen people around him burst into laughter. They were laughing at Immortal Lord Crocodile for overestimating himself. How dare you? Immortal Lord Crocodile roared. His weakness was poked, and he immediately flew into a rage. He spread his arms, and a majestic aura spread out. He was about to make a move. However, someone beside him said lightly, Immortal Lord, step back for now. Bai Changchun stepped forward and stared at Jin Miao and the others. I hope you have the ability to take me away. Don't let me down. Everyone instantly felt an indescribable aura suddenly erupt from the thin body. The entire mountain peak gave off a feeling of majesty that instantly melded with the heavens and earth. Suddenly, the green-robed body seemed so tall and big. Under that thin face, his lips moved slightly, and a sonorous Sanskrit chant resounded through the sky. There is righteousness in heaven and earth. A majestic pressure suddenly descended from the sky and gushed out from the ground, surging between heaven and earth. It could not be seen or touched, but it felt so clear and intimidating. These immortals with high cultivation looked around in horror. The willfulness that they usually had when they soared between heaven and earth had suddenly disappeared. At this moment, in the face of the power of heaven and earth, they suddenly felt so small. Jin Miao's pupils shrank. She looked at Bai Changchun in disbelief and shouted, "Kill him! Righteousness, condense!" As soon as she finished speaking, the majestic aura in the surroundings instantly condensed and pressed down like thousands of towering mountains. The huge pressure made the eyes of the dozen people who were extracting immortal treasures bulge. Among them, 2 of the weaker ones exploded into 2 clouds of blood mist on the spot. They finally understood that once the power of heaven and earth was unleashed, it was not something that could be resisted by humans. The rest of the people who were extracting immortal treasures had become slow motion. They were suffering from the huge pressure of resisting the power of heaven and earth. Bai Changchun stared at them indifferently, expressionless. Immortal Lord Crocodile and Yu Qianqiu stood beside Bai Changchun. Although they could feel the terrifying power of heaven and earth, they did not feel any pressure. But from the actions of the people floating in the air opposite them, they could see that this inexplicable power was indescribably strong, because 2 immortals could not resist it and died on the spot. Yu Qianqiu's mouth turned into a circle, and his eyes shone brightly. He did not know how to express his admiration for the old man. In short, he still worshipped the old man as always. Damn! Immortal Lord Crocodile's lips were tightly shut, and the muscles on his cheeks kept twitching. He stared at the back of the thin figure in front of him in a green robe. At this moment, Bai Changchun stretched out his right hand from behind his back. He raised his palm and slowly lifted it up. Under the heavy pressure, a steady stream of air squeezed in from all directions and gathered in his palm. A dazzling light burst out, and the ball of light grew bigger and more dazzling. Suddenly, the withered palm moved, shuttling through the ball of light, changing into an unfathomable trajectory. Finger shadows intertwined, and countless sharp white lights burst out from the fingertips. In the blink of an eye, thousands of streams of light flew toward the dozen people floating in the air opposite them like a storm. The scene of cornucopia green eyebrows being struck down flashed in Yu Qianqiu's mind. He said in a daze, "Immortal lost finger." Chapter 740. Immortal Lord Crocodile's ears twitched. He glanced at Yu Qianqiu and memorized the name, Lost Immortal Finger. Thousands of beams of light closed in. One could feel the powerful penetrating power of each beam. At the critical moment of life and death, Jin Miao had no choice but to risk his life. With a loud "hi," he bit the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. Taking advantage of the slight relaxation of the huge pressure, a golden light suddenly flashed out from the bracelet on his wrist, and a large golden umbrella opened up. Bang bang, the flowing light bombarded the golden umbrella, causing continuous explosions. The golden umbrella emitted a pale golden light. The umbrella's rim shone and enveloped Jin Miao, removing the huge pressure around him. The golden umbrella slowly rose and floated above Jin Miao's head. Jin Miao, who had a mouth full of blood, heaved a sigh of relief. He moved around with the golden umbrella, but the pressure outside was still too great. He could not escape, so he gave up. His sinister face was like an owl as he stared at Bai Changchun. Although he had managed to escape this calamity, the dozen or so people around him were not spared. All of them were turned into sieves by the sharp lights. Once injured, they immediately lost the ability to resist the pressure and exploded into a dozen clouds of blood mist. Because of the huge pressure, they did not even have the chance to scream. Just like that, they died. Golden Umbrella. Immortal Lord Crocodile frowned. Yu Qianqiu immediately asked, "What treasure?" Immortal Lord Crocodile stared at Jin Miao and explained, he was one of the 24 protectors of Immortal Emperor Jin Tai's throne room. Every protector was given an immortal treasure by Grand Master Jin, and the one in his hand was a top-grade defensive immortal treasure. With his cultivation, without the help of a powerful treasure, even Jin Tai himself would not be able to break it. Jin Miao's gaze turned to Immortal Lord Crocodile and he sneered. That's a very clear explanation. The Immortal Emperor favored you. I didn't expect you to become a traitor. Immortal Lord Crocodile glanced at Bai Changchun, who had stopped attacking. Don't you want to kill me too? I want to see how you leave here today. Ha! Jin Miao looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. I admit that this old man's methods are extraordinary, but he's dreaming if he wants to break through my Golden Light Umbrella's defense. I will hide in the Golden Umbrella and not come out. Let's see what you can do to me. Immortal Lord Crocodile frowned. Although he was unhappy, he knew that he was right. The Golden Light Umbrella's defense was indeed very strong, and it was indeed very difficult to break through. Even if I can trap him here forever, it's not a solution. I turned to look at Bai Changchun, hoping that he would have some ideas. Bai Changchun slowly closed his eyes. Little did he know that he was also stumped. From the fact that his attack had been neutralized, he could tell that it would be very difficult for him to break through the power of this umbrella with his current cultivation, unless he had the help of some treasure. As the saying goes, someone sends you a pillow when you're dozing off. Yu Qianqiu looked at the arrogant guy who was laughing wildly. He wanted to rush up and kick him, but he couldn't do anything with his own abilities. Just as he was angry, he suddenly froze. He foolishly took out the dark golden sword that had suppressed Immortal Lord Crocodile for more than 100,000 years. He looked at Bai Changchun, then at Immortal Lord Crocodile, and said, "Can this thing break through his defense?" Immortal Lord Crocodile's gaze fell on the divine sword, and he suddenly clapped excitedly. He pointed at Jin Miao and laughed loudly. Jin Miao, consider yourself unlucky to have encountered such a good thing. You're dead today. Bai Changchun couldn't help but open his eyes to look at the thing in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Jin Miao was slightly stunned. He stared suspiciously at the sword in Yu Qianqiu's hand. Suddenly, his eyes widened, and he said in shock, "Myriad Swords Demon Lord, this is one of the Myriad Swords Demon Lord swords. Why is it here?" His eyes were filled with disbelief. Any cultivator who was trapped in the heaven and earth universe formation would recognize this thing. Not only did they recognize it, but it was deeply engraved in their hearts. It could be said that he had been terrified by this thing in the past. It would be strange if they didn't recognize it. It's useful? Yu Qianqiu shook the thing in his hand and asked suspiciously, "It can break his golden umbrella?" Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed loudly. "It's very useful. This is a divine artifact, and not an ordinary one at that. It's indestructible. I don't know how many celestial treasures have been turned into scrap metal in the past. Breaking his golden umbrella is like using a sledgehammer to kill a chicken. Damn it, why didn't you say so earlier?" Yu Qianqiu pointed the sword in his hand at Jin Miao and said, "Be ****, who asked you to be so arrogant? Watch how I kill you." He took a step forward and realized that it was difficult to move forward. The pressure in front of him was too great, and he couldn't overcome it at all. "Yu Qianqiu, make the sword bigger. Lend it to me." Immortal Lord Crocodile laughed loudly. He rolled up his sleeves energetically and said, "How dare he look down on me? Let me deal with him personally." "No problem." Yu Qianqiu laughed sinisterly. Sometimes, he liked to help the wicked do bad things. Immortal Lord Crocodile cooperated with him and shouted, "Bigger, bigger." At the blink of an eye, a slightly deformed giant sword appeared. The hilt was still small, and in Yu Qianzhou's hand, the blade was more than 10 meters long. Yu Qianzhou turned his head and asked, "Is this enough?" Immortal Lord Crocodile nodded repeatedly and said, "Almost." As he said this, he grabbed the divine sword. When it landed in his hand, it felt heavy. It was simply too heavy, a full 108,000 kilograms. He had no choice. He couldn't control it, so he could only use brute force. Fortunately, with his cultivation level, he could still hold it. "Brother Bai, please loosen the path for me. Let me deal with that despicable person with my own hands." Immortal Lord Crocodile smiled at Bai Changchun. Bai Changchun looked at the two of them shouting, "Big, big, big." His expression was a little. He nodded slightly in agreement. Once the pressure in front of him lessened, Immortal Lord Crocodile immediately flew over with the giant sword, landing in front of the golden umbrella and laughing lewdly. Looking at the giant sword, Jin Miao was a little stunned. He immediately said in horror, "Immortal Lord, I was too presumptuous just now. We can talk things out. Wait, if you push me too far, I will self-destruct and die with you." "A despicable person like you? You don't have the guts to self-destruct even if I asked you to. Are you willing to be destroyed forever?" As Immortal Lord Crocodile spoke, the giant sword in his hand swept horizontally. With a whoosh, it directly cut through the golden light curtain that sprinkled down from the umbrella. As expected of a divine sword, its indestructible sharpness went without saying. It sliced through the golden light curtain like a knife cutting through tofu. The giant sword was too big, and there was almost no space for Jin Miao to dodge. Jin Miao, who was under the umbrella, exclaimed, "Immortal Lord, spare me." "Ah!" There was a scream, and blood spurted out. The person under the umbrella was cut in half. The golden umbrella, which had lost its magic power to support it, was put away. A huge pressure surged, and immediately the two halves of the body exploded into two clouds of blood mist. At this moment, the huge pressure disappeared instantly, and the thick pressure also dissipated between heaven and earth. Everything returned to normal. Immortal Lord Crocodile grabbed the golden umbrella, wiped away the remaining divine sense inside, and threw it to Yu Qianzhou. "Take this. Your cultivation level is low, so I'll give you a good life-saving item." Yu Qianzhou caught the closed golden umbrella and winked at it. He turned around and hugged it, fondling it as if he was hugging a sexy and enchanting beauty. "What a shame. I've never seen this before. Put away your divine sword." Immortal Lord Crocodile returned the sword to Yu Qianzhou, who quickly shrunk it. He held the sword in one hand and the umbrella in the other. He looked at both sides and nodded with satisfaction. One was an indestructible divine sword, and the other was a golden umbrella with amazing defense. It was a perfect match. Good stuff. Bai Changchun frowned slightly and stood still, as if he had gained some enlightenment from the battle just now. Immortal Lord Crocodile walked over and sighed. "Brother Bai's methods have really opened my eyes. The power of heaven and earth comes and goes at your beck and call. I wonder what this technique is. Do you have a name for me to admire?" Bai Changchun glanced at him and said calmly, "Let's call it the morality technique. I've gained some enlightenment, but it needs to be perfected. There is morality in heaven and earth. Righteousness. Morality technique." Immortal Lord Crocodile took a deep breath and looked into the distance. He shook his head and clicked his tongue. "Not bad, it's a good name." Just the name alone was enough to make one ponder. There is morality in heaven and earth, and morality is everlasting and mighty. The power of heaven and earth. Don't underestimate it, don't underestimate it. Bai Changchun looked at Yu Qianzhou, who was hugging the treasure and smiling. He said, "Immortal Lord Crocodile, I would like to ask you some questions." Immortal Lord Crocodile turned to face him. "I've lived for hundreds of thousands of years, and there aren't many people that I truly admire. You, Bai Changchun, are one of them. If you have any questions, ask away. I will tell you everything I know." "You flatter me." Bai Changchun said calmly, "The treasures used by human cultivators are relatively crude. I'm not knowledgeable, and today is the first time I've seen such a strong defensive immortal treasure like the Golden Umbrella. There must be many similar treasures in the Netherworld and Immortal World. Do you really need to use a treasure that can restrain it to break it? That's hard to say. Usually, other than using the corresponding treasure to break it, you can only rely on your strong cultivation. If that doesn't work, you can only escape and wait for a chance to sneak an attack," Immortal Lord Crocodile said slowly. When Yu Qianzhou heard this, he immediately understood Bai Changchun's apprehension. Obviously, it was because of what happened just now. He walked over with the two treasures in his hands and offered them to Immortal Lord Crocodile. "Master, you should take these two treasures with you. With them, you should be able to solve a lot of problems." Immortal Lord Crocodile looked at Yu Qianzhou with a hint of surprise in his eyes. He nodded slightly. However, Bai Changchun shook his head. "These are not suitable for me. If I use them too often, I'll become dependent on them. You should use them sparingly. It's best not to use them unless you have no other choice. Using too many of them will only harm your cultivation. You're on your own." With that, he turned into a green stream of light and flew into the sky. Yu Qianzhou was speechless as he held the two treasures. He didn't expect to be taught a lesson for his good intentions. But as he watched the green stream of light disappear in the sky, he felt suffocated. After this farewell, he didn't know when they would meet again, and he didn't know if they would have the chance to meet again. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.